Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to episode 150. Holy crap, we hit that magic number of Heavy
hmm
Metallurgy. Tonight, Alan and myself and our special guests are going to take you inside the electric circus. But until we get there, Alan, how are you today?
I'm pretty good. It's been a long, busy week, but things are settled down here for the evening, which is really nice. And it's good because we are streaming, people. It's that time.
It is that time.
It's spelled WASP. We are streaming,
Streaming people. Oh,
people.
okay.
Yeah.
I got it. I got it. Yeah,
Might not be the last time it happens tonight. I'm just going to warn you.
yeah. I better get the one thing up I needed to get up for history. So yeah, it's been a week. I've had the last couple days I've taken off, and I've just been focusing on heavy metallurgy stuff, and it's been kind of a fun couple days. It's been good.
hmm
Good week. Good productive week for the channel and here at home as well. So always a joy to spend the Friday with my awesome co-host and all you fine folks in the chat. And what are we doing today, Alan? Who are we talking to today?
We are talking to one of our favorite guests. We have lots of those, but yeah, this man always does a great job when he comes on, and we haven't been able to get him for a while because he's always very busy. But very happy to have Mr. Darcy join us for the evening. Why don't we bring him on out here? There he is.
Hey
Welcome
guys.
back, Darcy. Been a long time. How have you been?
Hey, glad to be back. Thank you for the invite. I always appreciate that. Yeah, very excited about this episode. This is right up my alley. So, yeah.
You know, it's been for me, just to kind of jump in a little bit, I own 2, 4, 6 W.A.S.P albums. So I had a lot of homework to do this week. But this homework wasn't a big deal. It was actually a lot of fun to listen to these albums. Most I have not heard before. So I'm a little surprised at in a little bit of a Cliff Notes thing here. At the end of the homework session, the thing I come up with is W.A.S.P kicks ass. They're a great band. They're just a great band driven by a good songwriter and an amazing singer. That I think is for me the biggest takeaway is how good of a vocalist Blackie Lawless is.
Mhm. Totally agree. Yeah, definitely. If you had to think about some of the guys that have a distinct sound, he's definitely falls into that category. But just I don't know, very eerie at times. Just he just covers all the bases. And you said, the homework was fun, and for me, and like I said, this is right up my alley. So probably 10 out of these 15 albums, they're pretty much, I just put them on autopilot in my mind. I've been, there's a period in probably the 90s where I, had kids and things like that. Kind of couldn't afford everything. You missed a few releases here and there,
Mm-hmm.
hmm
but overall, especially those early albums, I know those like the back of my hand. I remember buying them. I remember, what was going on in my life at the time. And yeah, some really good stuff in here.
What about you, Alan?
Yeah, and I agree. W.A.S.P is a band. I feel like people focus on certain albums all the time and then overlook the rest of the albums most of the time, which is kind of a shame because, like you said, their discography is, actually pretty good all the way through. I don't know if there's any albums that stink. There are some that are definitely stronger than others, but W.A.S.P. One was always pretty consistent. There's no gigantic gap in his cap. It's only in the past 10 years that he hasn't been putting stuff out. But all the way from 84 up to about 2015, it's very consistent. Albums coming out every few years, and yeah, most of them have some really strong points to them, even if some of them maybe are weaker than others. So I agree. It's been a sort of fun task digging back into their catalog. I knew most of their albums from over the years. Some of them I had not heard in a long time, and there were a couple, like Darcy said, that had slipped through the cracks. But it was a very fun band to catch up on, work out some rankings for, and so I think all of us can agree that for this topic, we are so pumped.
Okay, that's number 2. I'm going to keep track of this.
You might have a busy night. We'll see how it goes.
We are slimy peons. Oh,
Okay, there's 3. Yeah.
He doesn't get credit for that. No.
well, that was just off the cuff,
I
For me, W.A.S.P was, I think the first time I saw W.A.S.P might have been on Canada's Much Music's Pepsi Power Hour. The I Want to Be Somebody video.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it was pretty blown away by. And then, of course, I saw them on MTV as well. But it was one of those bands. They had an LA feel somehow, but they were way sleazier, and there was these guys that were super tall and done up in makeup that was kind of wrong. It was just something about them visually was intimidating, and their music was kind of like a buzzsaw, a heavy metal buzzsaw. That guitar tone, Chris Holmes' guitar tone, that's always been a standout of him for me, is the way his tone has that characteristic. And of course, Blackie's vocals are undeniable. What a gritty crooner that guy is. He can scream, he can belt it out, he can sing, but he keeps this grime in his vocal cords that works whether W.A.S.P is going hard and heavy or if W.A.S.P is, dipping into ballads, which they do.
Well,
But yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. No, you.
I was just reading the comment here from Mike. I kind of really agree with him because W.A.S.P was really a hard band to give categorize them. They were kind of just in the middle. They were.
Yep.
I even try to think of other bands that had, I'm not going to say identity crisis, but even a band like Armored Saint, they were in just kind of in no man's land. W.A.S.P was more like what you said, the sleazy, but on a rougher level. Like it's just, and I think they knew it too, and they kind of ended up, for a while they're kind of cornering the market because they were huge for a while. So
well, yeah, they had the scantily clad, almost naked women chained to a rack that Blackie would go and torture, and they would throw raw chunks of meat into the crowd. I mean, they were operating in a LA scene, and people were trying to push them into that the square peg in a round hole. They're trying to make them fit in the LA glam scene. But they were kind of attacking it in a lot of ways. They were a part of it, but they were also saying, we can do this too, but we're going to be disgusting and vile about it. And they did. They were. And that rate alone, early on, give them a rise to popularity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny because, well, if you just glance at them, you spend 5 seconds looking at the album cover for the first time, yeah, you might mistake them for like, oh, okay, this is, just another big hair makeup kind of, Poison clone or whatever. But even though, they had a little bit of that look going on, they never really tried passing themselves off as, the ultra pretty boys, with, the fashionable clothes or anything like that.
Yeah.
The music always had a much, much harder, heavier edge to it. But yeah, I like the way Darcy described it, that, they were kind of in this in-between middle ground.
Yep.
That they had a little bit of the visual similarities to the glam scene. The music was too heavy for a lot of those folks, though. But at the same time, other people, I can only imagine, like, the Bay Area thrash fans would have looked at this band and said, "Screw that! I'm not listening to that crap. Go home and play with Warrant or something." So yeah, they had that in between thing, but it also kind of worked for them. As Darcy said, they were very big for a long time. They still have a very dedicated fan base. Yeah, it's just that I think a lot of people sort of lost track of them after a certain point and didn't realize, that Blackie kept it going, just on a little more underground level through the 90s and into the 2000s.
And I did pull up a little bit of history I can read through for those that might not know. Shall I read through that real quick before we get started?
Sure.
W.A.S.P is an American heavy metal band formed in 1982. They emerged from the early 1980s Los Angeles heavy metal scene. The band's popularity peaked that decade, yet they continue to record and tour. W.A.S.P gained notoriety for their shock rock themed image, lyrics, and live performances. They have sold over 12 million records worldwide, with their first two albums, W.A.S.P in 1984 and The Last Command 1985, being certified as gold by the RIAA. The rest just kind of starts going into their history a little bit, which we're going to do tonight, album by album. So I will forego that. But there's the quick and dirty history of it. 1982, long time ago. It used to not feel like a long time ago, but when we talk about the 80s and I think about, or the 90s, I think about it like it was yesterday, or like the early 2000s. We just did what, 2014, and it seems like yesterday, but it's a decade, 10-year anniversary. So
Yeah.
crazy.
No, I was thinking about that too when I was talking about, you know, the new Judas Priest album and my connection to 1984 with the Fenders, and 40 years has blown by. And for W.A.S.P, 40 years has blown by with them too.
Yep.
So there was, I said, a couple of kind of metal life-changing experiences, and that Priest show was one of them. And I also got to see W.A.S.P in 1984 in their heyday. And I still got the tickets. I don't know if you can see them.
Let me blow you up. I'll blow you up. There you go.
That's very cool.
So they were special guests for Crocus on this tour, okay?
I used to have that tape. Yep.
Mhm.
So,
Not a bad album. Good album.
well, you can know who won this battle that night, because W.A.S.P
Yeah.
absolutely blew them away. It should have been the other way around, to be honest with you, because at that point Crocus was only scratching the surface in North America with Headhunter, and then they went even more commercial with Blitz. Anyways, so should we fire it in there? Did we tell the guests what we're doing? We're going to go from debut to, and then
debut to Golgatha in 2015, and we're going to each talk about, we're going to talk about what we think about it, our thoughts, and we'll give it a ranking as it's our turn, and we'll just discuss each album. So we're gonna,
we'll go
me to go
chronologically
first?
rather than counting them down. Yep. Good point, Darcy.
give everybody the light show first.
Nice.
Damn it, that's cool. I'm jealous. My nipples
you
are
do
hard.
that, Marty?
My
Jesus,
nipples are hard right now.
that's
It's great.
pretty good. Yeah.
That is pretty sweet.
You want me to go first?
Go
Absolutely. You are the guest.
Okay.
So
Well,
lead us off.
we're going to go from the debut, and then we're going to give it a ranking as we go, right?
Yep. We're going to talk about it, which all you want to talk about, and then in the end, what you ranked it, why you ranked it that way, and just,
Well, if
we'll get it
anybody
rolling.
knows me, they already know what's coming. So the debut, number one, always has been, always will be, and that ticket there that I showed you was kind of my segue, and just a shitload of memories from this, and it was definitely a game changer for me. It just reinforced to me back then that I was on the right path with the music choices and just the passion and everything I took from this. But this album, there's just nothing weak on here. There's no cover songs. And you mentioned earlier that you saw the video for "I Want to Be Somebody" on Headbangers Ball or much
music power, Pepsi Power Hour. Yep.
Pepsi Power Hour, which where you live, you probably got that on your TV.
No, we had my parents had a satellite dish because we never had cable. We always had 1.5 channels because we lived in the woods. So my dad splurged and bought a dish.
But just everything on here. I mean, The Flame, School Days, Love Machine. I mean, Hellion, On Your Knees, which they still play. They still play half of this album live. Well, they probably played the whole thing there on that 40th tour or whatever, or some of it. But Tormentor, The Torture Never Stops. And you know what? I'll throw it out there. I love this lineup. Okay. I loved when Blackie was on bass and he was, the leader in the middle of the stage with the bass, and then having these two, especially Holmes, he's got to be 6'6" at least on one side, and then Randy Piper on the other side. That I kind of liked when Blackie was playing bass. I know his natural instrument is guitar, but number one right here. So I don't know where you guys are at with this one, but this is my number one.
Can't argue with that.
I think a lot of folks will have it number one. Yep.
Whoa. What happened? There we go.
All good.
It was all good.
Good deal. But yeah, I think for a lot of folks, this is a favorite. A lot of people have a lot of nostalgia tied to this album and such. I actually don't have a lot of nostalgia. I'm a little too young to have been paying attention when W.A.S.P was debuting with this. So I didn't hear this album, until much, much later on. But yeah, it's still, a classic. It's loaded with tunes everybody knows. Like you said, Darcy, they still play a lot of it. It's in their live set pretty regularly. So it's a hard album to argue with. The only thing that's ever really bugged me about the album, and it's a nitpick, to be very clear, this is a nitpick. A lot of the songs on the album have choruses where they just kind of repeat the name of the song a few times. And then they just repeat it a few more times. And there's nothing wrong with doing that here and there, but it from song to song, it feels like they do that maybe just once or twice too many times over the course of the album. You feel like maybe they were still kind of getting used to songwriting a little bit. And so the chorus was just, kept really basic, really simple. It's one of those things that stands out to me, when I play the album all the way through. It's like, yep, there's another one where it's just, let's repeat it again. L-O-V-E, L-O-V-E, again and again. But, still a very, very good album. And of course, they also had, kind of a boost right off the bat. They were not only on Capitol, but they had all the hype and or controversy surrounding, the Animal single that wasn't included on the album for obvious reasons. But, that gained them a lot of notoriety and got people interested and wanted to check out this band that actually, put the F word in a song title in 1984, and again, this isn't some, cult bedroom black metal project that only 100 people are ever going to hear. This was a band on Capitol, and that was wanting to put out a song called Fuck Like a Beast. So that pushed things along pretty nicely for them as well. So yeah, it's, a classic, deservedly so. For me, I would put this one third in their discography overall. There are two albums I like more. And to be honest, it's a big change from number 2 to number 3. The two albums I rank ahead of this, I rank way ahead of this. This is the first one I'd kind of put in the second tier of W.A.S.P albums, where there's several that are really, really good and deserve to be ranked high. But yeah, my top two really sort of, outpace the rest of the field. But we'll get to those in a little while. First off, we got to find out where Marty puts this one.
All right. Well, you mentioned the name of the song in the chorus. That for 1984 was kind of a staple.
It wasn't unusual. No,
it wasn't unusual. I mean, you listen to Tankard Zombie Attack. Every single song is the chorus is the song title. That's just not all bands did it, but it was just kind of a thing. So you bring it up, and now that you mention it, I think about, I'm like, yeah, he's kind of right. But also it was just kind of the status quo then. But for me, this is a sleazy and undeniable rock classic for sure. They captured, I mentioned this before, they captured the essence of the LA scene in the 80s, but they turned up the shock and injected the perfect amount of grime to all of it. And, the woman sacrifice, then the meat thing, it was, and the Animal Fuck Like a Beast single, it was all the perfect storm that really got them into the public eye. They were talked about on the LA scene. People wanted to go see them because of the stage show. You got him cutting up meat with his saw cod piece, and later on he had fire shooting out of it, all this other crazy shit. But yeah, for me, I'm looking at the ranking. Well, and also, great songs and vocals. I Want to Be Somebody, On Your Knees, Hellion, Torture Never Stops, Love Machine, The Flame. I like all of it. It's just a great record from start to finish. It's number 1 for me, 100%. It's the blueprint where they all followed, whether they tried to stray from it, which they did. I was checking out this spam comment.
The one thing too, I should have mentioned right away too, is the gang vocals. You got a song like School Days, and then you got Here Doing Time, School Days, then you got, but I know what you mean, Alan, about even like when you said that about the repetition, the Torture Never Stops came to my mind right away, because it was very, the torture never stops, but songs like even BAD, like just the gang vocals in the background, and yeah, they're just top notch.
Which leads us to
Well, we're kind of done. You've both already revealed your number one, and mine was number 3. Good night, everybody. It was fun. It's all downhill from here, folks.
Oh, but there's some surprises. Don't worry.
No, there's lots of good stuff to come. And yeah, like we said before, it's actually a really consistent catalog, and so folks may not know all the parts of it. So, okay, you twisted my arm. We'll keep going.
All right, you're going next?
Nope, you're next. It brings us to Last Command, 1985, a year later.
You want me to go first every time?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
You're the tip of the spear on this thing.
Oh man, I think I might be influencing your changes, your picks. Then I don't know.
My picks are all written down.
I'm
in
just
stone.
bugging you. Okay, Last Command coming up. I got it right here. So Last Command. This is my 4th favorite W.A.S.P album. Now, there's a couple others that are just so damn close. It's just you're just splitting hairs with some of these. So so this came out in 1985. At this time, I already know the band well. I am waiting 85. I don't know if I had my driver's license. I was probably on my BMX bike waiting in front of the record store to pick up this brand new release on cassette. Now, what I absolutely love this album. I love every part of it, but there is some differences here. This is a much more polished W.A.S.P album. Believe it or not, this is, besides the debut, this is the only other album that Blackie had an actual producer on the album. And you'll know the name Spencer Proffer. The biggest thing Spencer Proffer ever produced would be Quiet Riot Metal Health. So you'd know that Spencer from that and lots of other metal shit. But this one's got a lot more polish on it. And I forget Wild Child. I mean, that video is out on the desert, man. Yeah. That is an awesome video. Randy Piper, Chris Holmes just going nuts. And I always remembered, I think Randy had that skull guitar, like skull-shaped guitar.
Yep.
And also his tailpipe guitar. I just love those two guitars. That's what I remember from that time. But Wild Child video was so awesome. And then you had, I think the second single might have been Blind in Texas, which is very different, really. And it had some horsing around in the middle and get back on your horse, goofball, and ride back to LA or whatever he said. But this one, so many good songs. And I talked about the gang vocals, like a song like Running Wild in the Streets has that. Maybe the only stinker on there for me would be the last track, Sex Drive. It's okay, just very generic. But this album contains my single favorite W.A.S.P song, and that is Widowmaker.
It's great. It's
absolutely love that song. There's so many great W.A.S.P songs, but if you made me pick one favorite W.A.S.P song, it would be Widowmaker. I just love that eerie beginning with the bass, and then the I don't know what instrument you would call that. It's a satire. I forget what it's called, but
sitar.
Yeah, a sitar. Yeah, there you go. And that's in there. Then there is a couple weaker stuff on here, like Jack Action, but Ball Crusher. There's still that sleazy side to W.A.S.P that people love, and that's all on here, with a little more grown-up stuff. The Last Command. I don't know if it's true, but I remember this album possibly being called Who Dares Wins, which is on the inner sleeve, but they went with this title instead. They went with The Last Command, yeah, we got Blackie on the cover. I don't know if you know the story behind that. They just wanted to focus on not having band. Like, the only band photo that W.A.S.P ever had on an album cover was the debut. And then they kind of just, and obviously you guys all know that Blackie pretty much is W.A.S.P. He's the leader. There is no W.A.S.P without him, is what I'm trying to say. But anyways, I'll stop talking, but this is my number 4. Awesome album.
All right, Alan.
Yeah, good summary. For me, this one has a lot of really good songs on it. I like pretty much everything on side A. It's got a really good run with Wild Child, Ball Crusher, Fistful of Diamonds, Widowmaker's on there too. I do think this album runs out of gas as you go through side B. Like you said, Darcy, Sex Drive's not that great. I'm not crazy about. I really not crazy about the title track, Last Command. Running Wild in the Streets is also kind of. It's not that they're awful. It just feels like they're maybe kind of scraping the bottom of their playbook at that point. So side B's a little weaker. That's one of my two issues with this album. Good set of songs, but they just don't quite make it to the finish line. Second thing that's always bugged me about this album is that W.A.S.P are shittily produced. There you go. I don't like the production.
It
on this
improves
album.
for a minute, and then it gets towards the end. Anyway,
yeah.
I'm not going to disagree.
Yeah, the big thing for me with it is it's not that it's like a bad or messy sounding production job or anything, but it just doesn't give the songs any balls. And for W.A.S.P songs, that's kind of a capital offense. These are songs that need to be a little bit raw and rough and loud and in your face. And everything here sounds too clean and just a little too reined in. It has always bothered me about this album. It's why I don't play this album very often. I put it on, it's just like, oh yeah, I look at the track list on it and get excited. It's like, that's a killer. And I put it on and hit play. I'm like, but where's the fist in the mouth? Where's the punch? It's like, damn. I think a lot of these are songs that work better, on the live albums and live setting than they do on this album because of the production. So with all of that said, and just the fact that they've got a lot of other really good albums, this one I have ranked at number 7. I would still give it like a B or B minus kind of grade, like an 8 out of 10 kind of grade. So even though it's a bit lower in the ranking, I still think it is a good album. It's just that, runs out of gas and really needed, a production that's more suitable for this kind of material. Those are my nitpicks, and that's why I put it a bit lower at number 7. And Marty, sounds like you might agree a little bit on the production, but what else would you like to point out on this one?
I think the production was actually done that way to try to soften them up. If you listen,
I'm sure it was.
If you listen, first you watch the Wild Child and Blind in Texas. Blackie's dancing around in white boots or knee-high moccasins or something, and feathers hanging off of his clothes, and he's trying to play up the Native American thing. And you listen to this album on headphones, like Wild Child, that was their lead-off single. It's engineered and produced differently. There's all this stuff in the background. You got the organ on it. You got all this stuff that's built to strengthen the chorus, and you can tell that they were planning strategically which songs they're going to release. They're trying to soften their image.
Yep.
Obviously, the Naked
it's like
Ladies,
you said earlier. Sorry, Marty, to interrupt, but it's like what you said earlier. There's people were trying to fit this square peg into a round hole.
Yep, absolutely, and they went with it. And you're right. It kind of neutered the edge and punch of the early stuff. They didn't want Naked Ladies on racks anymore. That's not going to be able to make it on MTV. So, but anyway, for me, I mean, they abandoned the shock greatly on this. That's what brought them here in the first place, but they kind of quickly abandoned it. But what do I have in my notes here? They definitely embrace the more accessible nature of the 80s LA scene on this one. It's still good songs. I still like it. It's still W.A.S.P, Wild Child, Ball Crusher, Widowmaker, Blind in Texas. I love that stupid break in the middle of Blind in Texas. Hey, dude, let's party. And the music comes ripping back in. It's just kind of a cool little stop, a nod to their let's get drunk and fight type of vibe. But for me, this is number 5. I think it's a great record. I until I started cramming for this week, I figured this would have been my number 2, but it's kind of fallen back a little bit. So
yeah, that's same with me over the years. But I would say though, for this album, as far as production goes, and like I told you earlier, this is the only one besides the debut that they actually, where Blackie literally took over after this.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of Spencer Proffer. If you know the guy, you'll know he has a lot of influence on this album. And I think after this album, even though it was successful, I think Blackie just said, you know what, I'm doing this myself. And because to me, he would seem like a hard guy to work with. Blackie would be like more of like, hey, I'm doing this my way. So I think after this album, he's like, fuck it, I'm doing this myself.
And it really, if you got people with massive amounts of abuse, drugs or alcohol abuse, it's hard to rely on them for big decisions or trying to move the ball forward with songwriting, because people tend to get into a state of arrested development. That doesn't work for everybody, but Chris Holmes, I mean, you see him in Decline of Western Civilization. Whether that was staged or not, I don't know. It looked pretty authentic, but so is Mr. Leahy from the Trailer Park Boys, but he was just a great actor and he played an amazing drunk. That guy was awesome. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I can see why he kind of took the reins of it. We kind of realized that they had something here potentially, and he wanted to ride it longer than someone with substance abuse issues would allow to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, yeah, let's get into 1986 Inside the Electric Circus.
So
Darcy.
basically, it was literally a year later after The Last Command came out that Inside the Electric Circus, I think it came out around October 86. So, and I always talk about this. These are those years where they're banging off 84, 85, 86. This is nonstop touring, you think they might run out of some ideas. And maybe on this album a little bit they did, but man, they came out with a great album. Inside the Electric Circus, Marty already said 1986. I like this album cover, always have. The one thing I'll point out about W.A.S.P, and if is anybody that don't know the band well, they changed their logo. Their logo is different on every album. There's no Judas Priest logo. There's no Iron Maiden. It's always something that actually kind of ties into maybe the cover a little bit, or it's just different every time. But now production wise, this one is stripped back compared to The Last Command, and I love it more for that. So that's why this is my number 3. Now, the one thing, I guess, I don't know if it's a complaint, but there is 2 cover songs on here.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to mention that too. And that becomes a thing for him.
Yeah, on a couple albums. It's maybe not as much as you think, but it is. We'll talk about that in the future. But I Don't Need No Doctor. Actually, I got a fond memory of that song. That's one of the first songs I ever learned on bass guitar because it's so damn easy. But then you got Easy Living, which to me, yeah, it's an Uriah Heep cover that doesn't really fit in this album that well to me. Okay. It seems out of place, and with the length of this album already around 47, 48 minutes, they probably could have dropped that song and used it as a B-side or something, because the actual W.A.S.P songs on here that are good are unbelievable. They're awesome. Blackie sounds really good. The production is a little more, it's not like the debut. It's definitely not like Last Command. I don't know. Would you even say it's not even barely in the middle? It's just, I don't know, maybe a little touch of a hollow sound, which really works. But 95 Nasty, that was a single. But some of my favorites are Restless Gypsy, Shoot from the Hip. And you got some raunchy lyrics in here, Hot and Sticky, Here It Comes, blah, blah, blah. It's awesome. Mantronic. Now, Mantronic, I've always said that's literally, that opening riff to me is ripped off of Van Halen. Somebody call me, Get Me a Doctor. It is literally that opening riff. If you know the song from Van Halen, but whatever, Van Halen influenced a lot of people. But
95 Nasty starts off like an AC/DC song.
Yep. 95 Nasty, and great song too. But besides maybe Easy Living, a little bit out of place on here, and the last track, which they're good at putting some of their weaker stuff at the end, like The Rock Rolls On. It's a bit of a weaker track, but the title track, Inside the Electric Circus, awesome. Restless Gypsy, Shoot from the Hip, Sweet Cheetah, there's another great track. So there is my number 3.
Number 3. All right, Alan, what you got? What are your thoughts?
Thoughts on this one? I agree with Darcy. The production here is better, and I definitely like that more. It's got a better sound to it overall, and it definitely helps the material compared to that kind of weak, thinner sound that they had on The Last Command. I don't play this album much. I hadn't heard it in ages before we decided to work on the catalog for tonight. I think it's a good set of songs. It's a pretty consistent album. There's not anything that's really bad on it. I don't even mind the cover of Easy Living. I think they do a pretty good take on it. But I do agree they could have shifted at least one of the two covers, and used it as a B-side or something else. At the same time, there aren't any personal favorites on this album. If I were building, like a 60 or 70 minute kind of, personal playlist for W.A.S.P, I don't think there's anything from this album I would put on that. I think there's, much stronger songs on so many other albums that this one just wouldn't get represented. So it's a good album. It's a good sounding album. It just doesn't have the big highlight tracks that a lot of their other albums feature. For those reasons, let's see, where did I put this one? I put this one at 8. So even though it's got better production than Last Command, I feel that, again, it's an even album, but the strong songs on Last Command are still really great. There's some classics there. This one's just missing those standout tunes. So I have it ranked one step lower at number 8. It would still get a grade again, like that, sort of B- 7.5 or 8 out of 10 kind of range. So it's still a, very, very solid album. Just, it lacks those songs that I want to come back to over and over again. Marty, what are you going to do with this one?
The time this came out, for some reason, I disliked it. I just seemed like Blackie trying to maintain the W.A.S.P aesthetic, but going one step closer towards more of a commercial acceptance. And I'm not going to lie. And one thing I wrote down on the digital, I listened to a lot of these digitally this week, for The Last Command, he did Mississippi Queen. It was part of the track list in the digital. Must have been a bonus.
Yeah.
This one,
that's I'm sorry to interrupt, Marty. That is something that we should probably point out here. A lot of W.A.S.P albums, as they got reissued, did get extra tracks added, and sometimes a track would get removed on certain pressings or versions too. So every now and then we may mention a track that seems kind of odd, just based on what version we're used to hearing.
Yeah. But the thing of it is, I start to think about the age of these guys, and a lot of these guys that started out early in the rock world, they started out as cover bands. They started out doing covers until, doing a club scene, until they started getting. Someone mentioned in here that he was part of the New York Dolls at one point. I heard that too. I don't know if it was the Dolls, but it was another band that surprised me he was a part of for a minute, or was going to be a part of. But so yeah, I understand the point of the cover songs, but also I look at cover songs as two ways. You don't have enough material to fill up your album, so you're gonna not one but two on this one. You got Easy Living by Ray Charles, by Uriah Heep, and then the other songs by Ray Charles. I don't need no Doctors or Ray Charles cover. Granted, I like the covers. I think they do a good job on it, but it's just, and we will, as we go on, there's some other albums too that have covers plunked in weird places. But this album for me is number 12. I like it. The longer, I can appreciate it more than I did back then. I just don't think you can tell that there's some restructuring in the band going on, and maybe they weren't as inspired to me for this time, but standouts for me, Inside the Electric Circus and 95 Nasty. I like both of those. They stand out. There's other good ones too. The covers are interesting. I don't think they need to be on this record. Didn't they also put out a video for I Don't Need No Doctor? Wasn't that a single or something?
I do not know.
I don't think so.
I don't know. Seems like I saw a video for it back in the day, but I could be wrong. But I think the covers on here are kind of a filler. It's a filler thing. It should be at the end of the album or on singles, as opposed to part of, especially as they go on and they start to become a little bit more conceptual. But anyway, my number 12. I know that seems kind of low, but that's just kind of the way it crumbles. Which brings us to 1989, The Headless Children.
The Headless Children. My number 2.
Such a great fucking record.
Yeah, this is right behind the debut for me. What are we? 1989. Kind of never really had a drummer at that time, so I think Frankie Banali did most of the drum work on this album. But and we haven't even mentioned that after Andy Piper left, Johnny Rod came in too, which also brought another element to this band, especially live, because he is one hell of a backup vocalist. He's pretty much a vocalist himself. So if you've ever watched any live footage with Johnny Rod, like old footage with the background vocals, he's phenomenal too. But yeah, you blast off right into this. One of my favorite W.A.S.P songs, period, is The Heretic, The Lost Child.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is just awesome. You know what? The Real Me, it's a good cover, but I could do without it.
Why is it the second position? It's kind of a conceptual album. Why is that on here?
It's a just kind of a bad spot for it on this album. Then you get into the title track, which is awesome. And then Thunderhead, one of my favorites. And then you got the Chris Holmes tribute song, Mean Man. I love that one.
That's a good song.
The riff is fantastic. And you had talked earlier about Chris's guitar tone. He has a distinct guitar tone.
Yep.
You know exactly who's playing, you know, his solos, you know, all his solos. The Neutron Bomber, good song. And whether you want to call it a ballad, whatever, Forever Free is a good track.
It's a great song.
Really good track.
Really good song.
Maneater. But then you wrap it up with a really strong song, Rebel in the FDG, which is Fucked Up Decadent Generation or something. Rebel in the FDG. That is a killer track too. Produced by Blackie Lawless. Yeah, my number 2. And it has been for years.
Cool cover too.
Yeah, it really is. It's got a lot of bad people in there throughout the years, kind of going into this mouth opening up, swallowing them whole, whatever. But yeah, there we go. Number 2.
All right, Alan, what do you think of Headless Children?
This is my favorite, and it's not even close. As good as some of their other albums are, this has always been and will always be my favorite W.A.S.P album. And to be clear, there is some personal bias because this is the first W.A.S.P album I ever got. So, you know, it made a big impression for sure. Yeah, the track list is, you know, just almost flawless. Yeah, it's an interesting start to the album because I agree with Darcy. You know, The Heretic's a great song. It's also, though, a little ballsy to open an album with a 7-minute track when you're W.A.S.P. in, what is this, 89.
Yeah.
It's an unusual move. And I think it sets a good tone right away. This is going to be a kind of darker and more serious W.A.S.P. You can make a case that W.A.S.P was always kind of dark, but, you know, in the past, like Marty, you put it well earlier, they were kind of going for the shock value dark. Like, you know, yeah, let's throw some meat at you and you'll whip the girl on the thing. This time, again, like looking at, you know, the images on the cover and stuff, you know, with all these, you know, nefarious characters and stuff. This time you get the sense, you know, they're not just dicking around with some new BDSM kind of stuff and all that, that it's going to be a little more real, but still have that, you know, very dark tone to it. And I think that works perfectly for this band. Having the cover song second, The Real Me, it is a little odd to put it there. I think they do a very good job on it. And I think that song works incredibly well for Blackie. You know, one thing we haven't touched on too much, but, you know, Blackie's, you know, made a career out of these songs that kind of focus on a bit of, you know, alienation, feeling like, you know, you're sort of, you know, isolated from other people, that, you know, you're always kind of the outsider.
Held back because you're different.
Or whatever it is that, yeah, you just, you know, yeah, you're not one of, you know, the in crowd or whatever. And, you know, the Real Me work, you know, when you listen to the lyrics on that, you know, it works perfectly. When he sings it, you get the sense, you know, he really does have sort of a personal connection with those lyrics and the topic that they're covering. So yeah, I like the start for this album, but, you know, those first 2 songs, it's an interesting way to kick it off. You know, you're not starting it off with, you know, a big party number or an obvious hit or anything like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, then you get to that third track and there's just no looking back for the rest of this album. Just every one of these songs could be on my personal W.A.S.P. best of album. The Headless Children is just this monster anthem that just sounds so doomy, which isn't something you'd think of with a band coming out of sort of an LA glam adjacent thing. This is a doomy song.
Dark doomy, for sure.
Yeah, it's very much so. And Thunderheads, just a skull crusher. Mean Man is yes, perfect for them.
It's a great song.
Neutron Bomber is one I've always loved. That just again, you've got it's one of these tales of just this sort of out of control, ostracized child who's running loose, and it works perfect for them. And Forever Free, it's Forever Free is one of the first times we really kind of see the softer side of Blackie Lawless. And a lot of people will piss all over ballads in heavy metal. When they're done poorly, yes, they're atrocious. Blackie tends to be able to do these really, really well. This is where he, I'm joking with the whole softer side thing, but he does have a voice that can operate very emotively on those type of songs. And I think it's another reason a lot of people have connected with him and become long-term fans of him. That it's not just him raging against the machine, but he can also kind of bare his soul on this kind of song, and that makes a big impact on a lot of listeners. So it's a great song. And at the end, I mean, it just keeps going. Man Eater's a great song, and yes, Rebel in the FDG, that's an anthem for all time. It's just an ass-kicking album. One testimony I can give to this album is this is one that occasionally back in the day I would play riding around in the pickup truck with my dad. And my dad, not a heavy metal person whatsoever, but this is one, even as this I want to play through, he'd just be like, damn, these guys are pretty badass. And just like, even he, and he's an old time rock and roll fan. So he kind of gets the whole rebel angle from, like early rock and roll and rockabilly. And so even though for us, W.A.S.P. is metal and all that, even he could, kind of hear and appreciate those elements that W.A.S.P. deliver on a lot of these tracks. He would never own a W.A.S.P. album. He wouldn't have any clue who Blackie Lawless is. But, he could hear that album just driving around, but just like, this Mean Man thing, this kicks some ass. You can play that again. I don't mind. It wasn't one of those, turn off that racket. It was like, back that up and play it again. That's pretty good. Yeah. So Headless Children, first number one.
Good choice for number one, Alan. Great choice. And the one thing I was going to say too, just Blackie, the emotion that he can put through his voice, even with his screams, like when he's like, oh no, here comes Ronnie, like on a Neutron Bomber. I mean, it gets you hooked. It's just and even I love his actual talking voice. You know what I mean? His everyday talking voice is very unique too. It's just like you put the two together, and you're like, that's why he sounds that damn good. But great choice for your number one.
The big chanting chorus, to Thunderhead here, hey, and you instantly want to be, one of the thousands chanting along to that. It's perfect.
And the part where he's like, there's somebody else is speaking. He goes, "Yes, master." That part.
Yep.
Oh man, that just puts chills down my. Will you die for me? Yes, master. I'm just like, fuck yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and you could listen to that and some people might think, it sounds a little cheesy or something. But if you're paying attention, it's like, it's this person just like, I'll throw my life away. I don't fucking care.
Yeah.
Is what it boils down to. You want it, you got it. Who gives a shit?
Yeah. Screw the PMRC. Yeah.
Or just screw everything. Just like, I don't, it has that, it has that, edge of like, I don't care if I live or die. Why the fuck not? It's a monster of an album for me. Their best. Marty, where do you rank this one?
Well, it's pretty interesting. There's a bit of a 180-degree shift because with Last Command and Inside the Electric Circus, you have a band that is purposely or willingly allowing others to mold them into a more commercially viable space. And on this Headless Children, it strikes me as them just kind of turning away from that 180-degree shift away. It's a darker album. There's no real hits on it. I mean, the Who song is the biggest hit on here. Just they had a video for it, and the Who had a hit with it as well. So again, to me, it just seems like I like the song. I like the performance, but at this point, I'm just kind of rolling my eyes at the covers. So that he uses them as filler, or because he connects with the song. I don't know if it's a little bit of both, but anyway, the song is darker. The conceptually more in depth than what they've really experienced before. And it just really focusing on hard rocking songs with an interesting twist to them. Is it their best? It's up there for me. It's number 2. It's number 2 for me.
Good.
All right.
Nice.
Darcy, we are now going with the Crimson Idol, 1992.
Moving into the 90s.
Wait, hold that thought for a second, because I should have did this after the last album. I want to quickly hold up this live album, Live in the Raw, and for 3 reasons. One very important reason, and that's the tracks that aren't on an album. Now, I'm cruising around. What was this? 1987. This came out. I think I had my driver's license because I remember cruising around, and I, pull up to a stoplight or whatever, have the window down, the stereo's cranked, and all the person next to me could hear is suck me, eat me raw. This is harder, faster. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, this is what it's all about. And I love that song. And The Manimal is a great track too that wasn't on a studio album. And you probably saw the video. Scream Until You Like It is a cover song, but they did a pretty good job on it. The video's kind of a little cheesy.
Isn't that like a Goonies soundtrack?
Yeah, it was on the Goonies 2 soundtrack.
Yeah.
But man, as long as I live, suck me, eat me raw. This is harder. It's so good.
You should go ahead and sing that to your wife after this. Put on a Sex Condor shirt and go in there.
You know what? Do you know what'll happen? I will be living in a van down by the river if I say that.
Or you never know.
You never know.
You never know.
Okay, so there's that interlude. I don't know if you guys have any connection to that live album, but it is
I don't have it. Nope.
And that was the second time I got to see them on that tour. So I've only saw W.A.S.P twice, 1984 and 1987-ish. So, but anyways, I'm grateful for that. I got to see them in their heyday. So, but anyways, next on the list, what do we got? The Crimson Idol, 1992.
That would do.
That's my number 5. Now, this is, full concept album. I mean, yes, I've listened to better concept albums. Seven Son of a Seven Son, Operation Mindcrime. We talked a little bit about in the green room, Sabotage Streets, but Crimson Idol is an excellent album. I love it. It is Gone is Chris Holmes. On this album is Bruce Kulick's brother, Bob Kulick. May he rest in peace. Bob, he plays all the lead work.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, he's a great performer.
Never read the insert to the tape.
The drums on this were mostly done by Frankie Banali, and then
rest in peace, Frankie Banali.
Yes, rest in peace, Frankie. And Stead Howland, who is the drummer for Metal Church, but he was also in W.A.S.P for quite a few years too. But this is a great story. Jonathan, not 6 strikes out.
Yeah, after you go do the suck me thing to the missus is what strikes out.
Ryan, I will let you know how that goes, but I don't think it's going to be good. But
spice it up a little. Come on.
It might be if it goes badly, it might become Darcy 6 Strings 0 Wives.
Yeah,
and you can parody Jurgen this time.
Yeah, zero lives for sure. But yeah, great. I like this one. So what I say, my number 5. Couple favorite tracks though for sure. The Invisible Boy, Chainsaw Charlie, Murders in the New Morgue, good track. The Idol. So this album's really got a little bit of everything. It's got those Forever Free moments. It's got the harsher, more serious W.A.S.P, but overall, yeah, decent album. I know kind of people, I would say, love it or hate it, maybe. I'm not sure, but I like it. It made number 5.
Alan.
Yeah, let's see. This one for me, I'll just start with the headline. This is my number 2. This, I think, is, I agree with Darcy. It's not the best concept album of all time, but it's way up there. It works very well as a story. Lots of the songs work well individually, too. And that, for me, is always the hallmark of a really good concept album, that it has to work as a whole, but you can't get so lost in the story that you forget to write individual songs that people can pick out and listen to as well. This album does both very, very well. I think also it works really well because it is something that topically Blackie kind of connects with. It's, semi-autobiographical, of course, in nature. It could, of course, also be about a lot of other people from the music business. So many people, had this, meteoric rise followed by plummeting back down to earth as soon as their, hit single was done and they couldn't produce another. They were just kind of thrown out, with yesterday's garbage and stuff. So, but yeah, just, the fact that it's, very personal kind of story to him, something that I think had been on his mind at least since the Electric Circus material, that, he, Blackie's no idiot. He had, kind of recognized this pattern in the music industry very early on. And this is his chance to really kind of get that out there, but, also, with other, baggage he was carrying around perhaps. So yeah, it's a very tight album, well put together. Everything here just works really well. It's held up incredibly well over time too. There are some concept albums that once you've heard them enough, you kind of just don't feel the need to go back to that story. But Crimson Idol, there's something a little bit timeless about that one that, it's just, very strong. And yes, some of the individual songs are among the band's best, like Chainsaw Charlie, like The Invisible Boy, other ones even later in the album. I Am the One works well. Hold On to My Heart is arguably his, best ballad. He's done several this one is probably, the creme de la creme for, that style of song from him. I feel like ever since that song, he's done other really good ballads, but I think he's always been chasing Hold On to My Heart just a little bit, trying to recapture that. So yeah, it's an iconic album for him. It's, sort of a watershed moment because, W.A.S.P has been big before this, of course. This album did very well, it was very well acclaimed. But after this, the band's, going to become a little bit invisible. They kind of peak here in a way, or maybe it's their second peak or their third peak. But after this, they kind of quietly, slip away a little bit. So the album's just notable on all these different levels. And that's, for me, it is number 2. My top 2 never really fluctuate with W.A.S.P. It's always Headless Children first. Just, I think, song for song, that album's better. But Crimson Idol is, a fantastic listen to this day. So Darcy's got it at 5. I've got it at number 2. Marty, where are you going to put?
I think it would be, well, I don't know if it's important to make this point, but you got older musicians. There is no denying the importance of albums like The Who's Tommy, Alice Cooper's Welcome to My Nightmare, or Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell. And it seems like guys like Blackie that are older, they've been writing music, they've been in the scene probably since the 70s. You get your band going, you get established, and eventually you're going to come upon writing an album like this. You want your big concept. I want my Tommy. And that's what this strikes me as. This is Blackie's.
Oh yeah, Blackie has flat out said that he was influenced by Pete and The Who on this one for sure.
And the cover on the album beforehand is just it reiterates that fact. But and I really want to call out, the Crimson Idol just for being an overblown sense of pretentiousness for a concept like this. But the album is too damn good. he did a really good job on it. Maybe it might be a bit too highbrow for the old fans, but Blackie really weaved in the new with the old perfectly on this record, I think, and it's amazingly well written and a joy to listen to. I just can't get over how well good the songs go over, and the build up, the takedown. It's very theatrical, very, I don't want to say cinematic. It's more it feels more like theater than a movie. I know there was supposed to be a movie that came with this. That didn't really happen, but again, that would have been the next step in pretentiousness. Oh, the movie that accompanies the album. Okay, Metallica tried that, and guess what? It didn't work. But bands like Sabotage. We talked about Streets earlier. I remember the first time I listened to Streets for that dive, and I'm like, oh my god, holy meatloaf, man, this is. But it's so good. It's just so well done, and there's so much room for experimentation on here. I think we heard it earlier in the track listing, but it becomes a bit more apparent in Blackie's songwriting moving forward is the organ. The organ in the background, he does the Hammond organ a lot, and I think it's a little bit more predominant on this record, but as we go, I hear it on almost every record. He fills in the Hammond organ with the guitars to fill out the bottom end. It's really interesting moving forward. But anyway, yeah, this is my number 3. I think it's a great record, and it's really hard to deny, even though it's a bit hoity-toity. Like, look how advanced I've become as a songwriter. Yeah, he has, and he's showing it off, and it works. It's not all bluster. It's actually, he's got skills and content here. So, yep, number 3 for me.
No, and I don't think any of us mentioned it, but back on Inside the Electric Circus on Easy Living, that's when you first heard those keyboards.
Yep.
And then you go into the Headless Children, and Ken Hensley is all over that album. He's actually on the album.
Yep.
And I think he was a huge influence to Blackie as bringing that forward a little bit too, especially into a nice concept album. I know Ken isn't on the Crimson Idol, but he's on probably 5 or 6 songs on the Headless Children. So, yeah, definitely probably an influence to Blackie there for sure. But
all right. Well,
before we jump into the next one, Marty, just for those keeping score at home, I think it's worth noting we've covered the first 5 albums, so we're about exactly a third of the way through the band's discography, and all 3 of us have already used our number 1, number 2, and number 3 slots, which it just strikes me because it harkens to something that Darcy mentioned before we went live. That while W.A.S.P has a very good and long catalog, I think for a lot of people it does feel a bit front loaded in terms of the earlier albums, and I think our rankings are kind of reflecting that so far.
Part of it for me might be familiar. Part of it for me might be familiarity, because
absolutely
I listened to this entire catalog and none of it sucks. In fact, I enjoyed just about every single album on this list except for the stupid re-idolized re-recording of Crimson Idol. But I mean, it's all well done. I like every album. If I saw it in a used bin, I would buy it. Anyway, we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think a lot of it is familiarity. Because like I said, starting with this next album, the band isn't as highly visible anymore. And so I think most people know the albums we've covered up to this point. After this point, if you weren't really paying attention and looking for these albums, you could have missed a lot of W.A.S.P albums while other stuff was happening in the music industry.
Mike has a good point. I think most rankings by most bands are just like that. Most bands shoot their wad at the beginning of their career and milk it as they go. They run out of ideas, they change members, the band changes,
It could be. That's an interesting point, Mike, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It is good to point that out, though, for sure. Which leads us to Still Not Black Enough, 1995, which could essentially be called the Blackie Lawless solo album.
Yeah.
He did everything on it. Yep.
Okay, where do I have this one? This is my number 9.
Hey, it's my number 9 too. Weird.
Yeah, the cover's hard to see, but there's a guy holding his hand like this, and there's some like a crow behind him. So dark cover, dark concept. But you're definitely right. Originally, this was going to be a Blackie Lawless solo album, but we know this story all over. No, we're going to put we need your name, W.A.S.P on there. We're going to, it's going to sell better, things like that. But you know what? It's not a bad album. I would say For me, it's a 50% really good, 50% not so good. And it's got a cover on here, which I actually don't mind. It's Somebody to Love by Jefferson Airplane, but
in the number 2 position again. What the hell?
It's just, I was just gonna say that it's just out of place for an album that is called, well, I don't know, Somebody to Love. Maybe this Blackie's searching for somebody to love, but it's got some good tracks on. The title track is pretty good. Goodbye America. So this is, you touched on some political stuff on Headless Children. You're going to see a lot more political stuff in upcoming future albums here that we show tonight, but Goodbye America. There's one song on here called I Can't, and it's got some tons of F-bombs. It's almost like a pointless lyrics. It just is not great. Rock and Roll to Death is pretty much a Chuck Berry song made by Blackie Lawless. It's not good. And Tie Your Mother Down, which is not a cover. That is actually not a cover song, but it's got a few good tracks, but I got this thing at number 9.
Right on. Alan, your thoughts?
Yeah, this one is interesting. And this is one where you will get different versions with different track lists. I don't think Tie Your Mother Down is on all the versions of it. But for me, this is one that, when I went on a W.A.S.P kick, I started finding it. Oh, there's some albums I didn't know about. So I had to track some of these down. Overall, I like this one a bit. It does have its flaws. It's not one I go back to and play as much as some of the others, but I think it still does a good job of, it's still operating in this same kind of, dark kind of atmosphere that they've been doing since the Headless Children. And it works for Blackie. He's very good at it. So yeah, the title track is very good. The Jefferson Airplane cover is very good. Maybe it's not the right slot for it in the track listing, but Blackie sounds really good on that song. And again, lyrically, it does work. It's not a happy poppy, like, yay, somebody to love. I mean, it's more this like almost, pleading, searching, is there anybody to love out there? It's got that, dark undercurrent to it. Black Forever is, very good. Scared to Death is another one of these that it has that, it's almost a slight, paranoia kind of vibe to it with Blackie, that things are just not going well, that there's, while I may, I'm a big name rock star and all this, but, look right under the surface of that and, shit, man, I've got problems. Things are really freaking me out. Yeah. Now Goodbye America is one that does, feel kind of different. Blackie, of course, now would do more political stuff later on, in songs, but that's a few years away. Keep Holding On is another very nice ballad. And if people don't like ballads, sure, go look mean and tough and frown on all your album covers. When a ballad is done this well, I have no problem with it whatsoever. It's a beautiful song. But yeah, Rock and Roll to Death, you're exactly right, Darcy. It's Blackie channeling his inner Chuck Berry. Don't need it here. One you didn't mention that I think is one of the best and one of the darkest songs on the album is I Can't. It's a really slow song. It's pretty simple construction, but it's just Blackie listing all these different things. Like, I can't feel, doom, and I can't love, it's just very slow, almost dirgy, and it's just him listing again, focused on all these things that just are out of reach. And it's not that I'm not loving right now, it's just like I can't, I'm incapable of, and it just really hammers that home very slowly. It's a very powerful tune. Love it a lot. My version has Tie Your Mother Down on it too. I was so hoping that was just a cover song that got thrown in for fun.
Actually, Alan,
part of my brain is still hoping it's a cover song thrown in for fun. You said it wasn't.
My copy's weird. The insert has Tie Your Mother Down, but my actual album does not have it on there because I don't even remember hearing it.
Oh,
it was just on the insert. But so my copy only has the one cover song, Somebody to Love. But and I should have mentioned the last track too. Sorry, No Way Out of Here is really good.
Yeah, yeah, it closes down. And again, it has this that weird kind of claustrophobic, paranoid, stuck in a box and can't get out of it kind of mentality. That Blackie's, yeah, to be fair, Blackie's done that more than a few times in his career. He knows that works for him. And Blackie, again, he's a smart guy. He plays to his strengths. He knows what the crowd's going to respond well to. He knows what songs are going to kind of what's going to work. He's not usually, maybe with a few exceptions, he's not usually going to go way outside the box and do something crazy that is going to leave people scratching their heads. But yeah, so I mean, there's a few misses in the track list, but overall, it's a very strong album. I rank this one higher than a lot of people do. You both had it at 9. I have it ranked at number 4. I really do like this album, even though I don't come back to it. I think it does all the things that W.A.S.P does very well, even if it is just Blackie himself doing it. And even if it is here kind of in the mid 90s where it's a weird time frame, that actually kind of makes me like it a little bit more because, he was still doing the W.A.S.P thing very solidly when most other bands from the 80s were trying other things by that time. Now Blackie's going to do that here in a minute too, but we'll talk about that in the next go round. But so yeah, still not Black enough. I think it's a really good album in the entries. I'll put it at number 4. And Marty, you said you were ranking it at number 9, but let you elaborate on it.
Yeah, I had to listen to this one on YouTube Music because it wasn't on Spotify, so I don't have the convenience of track breakdowns on here.
No worries.
But I can honestly say that I was surprised. The first half of this album, the rock songs on it, he put a lot into the Crimson Idol concept, the rock opera, so to speak. This one is more stripped down rock, hard hitting rock. I really, really like the songs. I think that Don't You Want Someone to Love is a distraction. If you're going to make a solo album, why are you putting 2 covers on the record? I just don't. The covers are supposed to be for fun. The covers are supposed to be tagged at the end as something special, a bonus. You don't put it at number 2 position on your album. He does it all the time. Anyway, the album I really like. It builds up steam, and then it hits a ballad. And I don't want to call it even a ballad. It's less than a ballad. It's very stripped down and simplistic. It's very airy. It's very empty feeling. Perhaps that is the point of the whole thing. I didn't like it. And in fact, after the ballad, the album tanks for me. It's like it kind of spirals. It's like it's doing the missile is the ballad, and then the plane's going, the album's going down like this. So it's still number 9. Even some of the songs I didn't care for much on the second half, they still sound good because of Blackie's voice. It just, number 9 for me. It's good. Real the first half. If it was the whole thing was as consistent as the first half of the album, it would have been even higher on my list because those first few songs are kick-ass, really good songs.
Yeah, I got a lot of the same feelings as you as far as the first half of the album goes, but it kind of redeems itself on the last track because I really like No Way Out of Here. I think it was a strong song to finish the album, but there's a few duds there in the middle. Like what was that ballad? Is it called a Breathe? Yeah, Breathe is kind of like you said, less than a ballad.
Yep. And that brings us to 1997's KFD, which stands for Kill Fuck Die. What'd you think of that one, Darcy?
Well,
is this where the Marry Kill Fuck game came from? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. And this is Chris Holmes' return to the band.
Yeah, and there might even be some W.A.S.P fans that are waiting for this one to see where it lands because this is my number 7.
I think it's good, man. I thought it was quite good.
This one is growing on me and growing on me and growing on me over the years. Now, I'd be lying if I told you I bought this one brand new at the time because 97, you know what? My first son was 1 year old. I didn't have no money to buy all the stuff I wanted. So I got this quite a few years later, probably maybe in 2001, 2002 or something. But this is a grower. It is a dark album. It's known for having some industrial vibes.
It's very minor though.
And that's what I want to reinforce to people that are giving up on this album. They need to go back and check it out because if you kind of scrape that little bit of industrial away, which goes away fast, you have a W.A.S.P album, you have a W.A.S.P sound, you have Chris Holmes back, you can hear him. Blackie and Chris both going through some tough times in their life at that time, and they went with, a very dark themes. And the one thing I was thinking about, this is 1997. Other bands were trying different things, and to me, this one really holds up when you look back at Metallica's Reload. You look at Megadeth, Cryptic Writings, Testament went even heavier route with Demonic, which to me is still my least favorite Testament album, even though it's got some good tracks.
Yeah.
Judas Priest came out with a new sound with Jugulator. And then you have W.A.S.P KFD with tracks like the title track Kill Fuck Die, awesome. Take the Addiction, Kill Your Pretty Face. There's a lot of killing going on in this album, okay? It's a lot of dark stuff, but if anybody wanted to check out a couple of my favorites, Little Death is a top-notch song. Wicked Love. I pull this W.A.S.P album out nowadays more than any, only because I know the 80s so well. I don't need to listen to it a lot. But this one, this one probably gets spun at least 4 times a year, easy. So number 7 for me.
All right. Alan.
Yeah, just seeing Mike's comment here. This album does get compared to Marilyn Manson a lot. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, they're just trying to hop on that bandwagon. That could be true to a point, but if so, they did Marilyn Manson better than Marilyn Manson did, for my money at least. So like Darcy said, there's
very minor.
Yeah, like you said, Marty, it's very minor. It is minor.
Yeah, this is not a flat out bad attempt at aping Nine Inch Nails or something like that. Yes, it's got more of an electronic kind of sound to it than anything they did before or anything they did after. This is their one-off experiment, if you want. But it works very well. And part of that is exactly what Darcy just said. They stay in that very dark headspace, which is where W.A.S.P kind of thrives. Which is kind of sad in a way when you think about it. It's one of those cases, like with certain artists where they always do their best stuff, when they're completely, strung out on crack. So well, that's not good for them though. With W.A.S.P, it's they're their best when they're totally fucked up in the head and super dark and oh, but that's sad. We want them to be happy sometime. But and like Darcy said, they were going through tough times. Blackie had gone through a divorce here around this time, and so a lot of this was getting that anger and frustration out of their system and onto tape, or well, by this point onto the digital equivalent of tape, whatever you would call that. But it's a very well done album, and I think a lot of people were too dismissive of it and continue to be too dismissive of it. It's one of those cases where it's just have you actually heard the album, or are you just looking at it, reading a couple of people's opinions and deciding what it is without ever giving it a fair shake? If some people honestly don't like it, that's of course quite okay, as long as they've actually checked it out for themselves. But I'd agree with Darcy. He picked out excellent tracks from this one. For a long time, this was my go-to W.A.S.P album as well, because yes, it was just so different and so unusual, and I really liked it. I don't go back to it as much in recent years. It hasn't worn out its welcome or anything. There's just only so much time to play stuff, and I don't reach for this one like I used to. But still, a very good album. Let's see. Darcy ranked it 7th. I'll rank it 6th, and if we had done this maybe 3 or 4 years ago, it would have been in my top 5. It's just outside that range tonight, but it could easily be in that range too. Right now we're still on that second. For me, this is still second tier, very strong W.A.S.P album. B plus kind of grades. Pushing an easy 8.5 out of 10 kind of grade. It's a very, very good album.
Yeah.
And Marty, it sounds like you're enthusiastic about this one too. So let's pass it over to you.
I remember hearing all the scuttlebutt about this one, being electronic, and someone mentioned Marilyn Manson, and I dislike Marilyn Manson. So if
Same
that
here.
would have reminded me of it, I would have given this a much lower. But so I was excited to check this out because I do enjoy some industrial music. I like the hybrid, the rock and electronic hybrid a bit. But it was a trend during this time. What year is this? This is 97.
Mm-hmm.
You got Rob Zombie blowing up. But anyway, W.A.S.P is trying to follow the times on this one into more electronic rock hybrid, more focus on simplistic riffs. And by simplistic riffs, there's some riffs that are just like progressions on one string. They're not even doing chords. That was one thing that this era kind of did. They simplified, but they would mix it up with other stuff too. Not all the songs are like that. The simplistic riffs mixed with electronic embellishments for sure. Blackie's vocals are always setting the bar high and setting the band apart from the rest of the scene for sure. But really, does W.A.S.P need to follow the trends? They don't. They did. Even though there are several eye-rolling moments on this album with the modernization, I'm like, oh, really? The album rips. It really is good. It's really well written. It's a bit, listening to it on headphones, again, they don't have it on Spotify, so I had to listen on YouTube Music. I don't have any track breakdowns. So it sounded a little blown out, like it was brick-walled. I mean, that was another thing back then. They were really pushing up or maybe it was remastered that way. I don't know. It seems loud. I was really impressed with the songs. I thought the songs were well done, and they kept the experimentation. It's there, but it's minimal. It's kind of an afterthought. It's still a W.A.S.P record. It sounds like a W.A.S.P record. There's a bit of a bite and an anger to it that maybe I attribute that to Chris Holmes. Because you look at the credits, it says all songs written by Chris Holmes and Blackie Lawless. So he has his finger in there. He has his ideas in the mix. His DNA is on these songs, and I always figured that Chris, brought Blackie's more highbrow ideas down to more of a street fight level. But yeah, for me, this is number 8. It ranked higher than Still Not Black Enough for sure. If I would have had more time to listen to it, it might have ranked higher. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good record. I'm like, what are all these people bitching about? This is pretty good. Surprising.
Yeah. Marty, before we sorry, go ahead, Darcy. There's something I want to mention.
Anybody new to that album or has maybe dismissed it, don't get too caught up in that electronic thing. There is minimal electronic drums on this album. Most of the drums are actually done by Sted Howland, real drums, or he on some he uses like the pads. If you're familiar with King Diamond the Eye, you know that kind of style, not quite as unnatural as like Judas Priest Ram It Down, anything like that, but there's real drums on this album, and again, reinforce that industrial shit is minimal. It's not Marilyn Manson by any means.
It's a flavor. They flavored it. They didn't go all in on it. Yeah.
Sorry, Alan, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to circle back to Marty made a good observation about it's W.A.S.P. Why did they follow the trend? They didn't have to follow the trend. It's something we hear about a lot of bands from that 90s era. Why did they stray from the formula? They're this, why did Creator get weird in the 90s? Why did Destruction get weird in the 90s? Why did any number of bands do that? Looking back on it today, it seems silly. Why did you have to do that? You were well established. You were doing great. Why didn't you just keep doing what you were doing? I think I want to push back on that a little bit. I think we tend to forget that this was 30 years ago. And at that time, those bands had only, been around for, a decade. Something like W.A.S.P had been around a little longer, maybe 15 years. But they were so dead in the water in the mid-90s. Again, W.A.S.P goes, from Capitol. This album's on a label called Raw Power. And at that point, those guys had, all these bands, not just W.A.S.P, but, pick any of these metal bands. They'd made a handful of albums a decade ago that did well. But now these guys are, they're middle-aged at this point. Maybe they're in their 30s. A band like, W.A.S.P, Blackie's maybe a little bit older. Maybe he was, 40-ish at the time. Maybe not even quite 40 yet. But I'm sure to a lot of them, it felt like their careers had completely stalled out. That they had gone, even you saw it with Judas Priest around this time, like with Jugulator. Yeah. 10 years earlier, Judas Priest was, selling out any stadium or arena in America they wanted. On the Jugulator tour, I saw them twice. They were playing in cowboy bars to maybe a couple of hundred people packed in, maybe at best.
Yeah.
I mean, these bands had no interest going on, and this was their livelihood. This is all they had done their entire life. I'm sure to me, it strikes me maybe being a little bit analogous to like pro athletes when they retire, where they haven't managed their money very well.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, great. I played my 7 years in the NFL. I'm 33 years old. I don't have any financial plans for the future. And now nobody wants me anymore.
Yeah.
And they kind of panic and they start doing all kinds of weird shit with real estate or, infomercials and all this. And people look at them and say, like, but how can you do that? You're a big NFL guy. Yeah, but at the time, that was in the rear view mirror. And, I would suspect bands like W.A.S.P had that same sensation. Just like, holy shit, it's been 6 years since anybody wanted to, make a music video of us. We're not on a big label anymore. We can't get the big tours anymore. There's all these new sounds out, and they may have been genuinely interested in some of, the new technology and new types of music coming out. Some of them, I'm sure, just hopped on bandwagons to try to catch a crumb. Some of them probably honestly thought it was interesting. So yeah, I think it's easy for us now in, the 21st century to look back and say W.A.S.P didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
In the mid 90s, those bands, a lot of them felt they really had to do it just to have a chance to survive. So I try not to be too harsh on those bands for doing it, even though, yes, some of those projects and the albums they put out were total disasters. I'm looking at you, Destruction. But at the same time, they weren't going to make it, if Destruction had just kept putting out thrash albums in the mid 90s, nobody would have bought them. So
it makes you wonder too, Alan, of how some of these bands survived the 90s too. If a lot of people are probably who watch your show and watch me and stuff, you're familiar with a label called Metal Is. You know the label Metal Is?
Sounds familiar.
Yep.
Or CMC International.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A lot of these bands ended up on these labels. They got, like, even Judas Priest got dropped from Epic back then. They ended up on CMC International for Jugulator. Then they got dropped. They got picked up by Atlantic Records for Demolition. And then finally back to Sony, whatever it's called, Sony Epic. But the moral of that story is lots of these bands, if it wasn't for some of these labels that weren't highfalutin labels, these guys wouldn't even have albums out. So grateful for that too. But you're right. Looking back, you can't be too harsh because that's what they thought they had to do to survive. So
yeah. And it's just worth remembering. Yeah, those bands, was W.A.S.P legendary in the 90s? No, they were. W.A.S.P in the 90s was looked at the way Deep Purple was looked at by the late 80s. They were a dinosaur. They were a relic. Dude, you don't have a flannel shirt and you're not from Seattle. We don't care about you. Go crawl back to your garage. And again, what are these guys supposed to do? Hang up the guitar. What's Blackie going to do? Hang up his guitar, put on a necktie, and become an insurance salesman? I don't see that working out for him.
Really, I agree with what your point here, Alan. But also on the flip side, on the more positive side of that, sometimes working with new elements sonically is inspirational. You're looking at the flavor of the day, and you don't want to think that your favorite artists are like, oh, we're going to follow trends. Maybe they're like, ooh, everybody's using this new technology. Let's fuck with that a little bit, see what we come up with. And thankfully for KFD, they did it. They messed with it, but they didn't go all in on it. This wasn't an all in on it record. It was flavored very tastefully, and it's a kind of they got a little piss and vinegar back on this record, and I thought that really shines through the material. So
no, again, I think W.A.S.P did, like Darcy said, I agree with him. They did it well here, whereas some bands did it much less well. Destruction.
And looking back, you guys, I am grateful that these bands got to try different things. Now, do I need 4 electric circuses in a row? No, I don't. I don't.
Well, you're going to get 4 Crimson Idols here
Oh,
in
are
this
ya?
catalog. Oh yeah, you got 4, one re-recording, and then 2 others that are basically suckling at the teats of Crimson Idol.
You get the Red Idol, the Crimson Idol, the Off Pink Idol.
Yeah, the
Hot
Neon
Pink Idol.
God, the Neon God Part 7. Yeah.
Where are we? We're on.
We are 99's Hel Dorado.
Here we go.
All right. So this is my number 15.
I got that one too.
Dead last.
Dead last. Wow.
Yeah. So this is the this one comes after KFD.
Yep.
So if you want to analyze it, KFD didn't do that well. You know, it wasn't well received. How we feel about it nowadays, it didn't matter back then. So they went to try to be that sleazy.
Go back to the first album. We got Chris back.
Yeah, but they just didn't quite get there. This is more AC/DC inspired than any W.A.S.P album out there. This to me is, there's a couple things that bother me about it. The songwriting is weak. I'm going to say Blackie screams a lot, but he always screams a lot, but he's extra screamy on this one, okay? It's almost where I can't quite actually get through this whole album without just shutting her down, because it almost gets on my nerves. There is a couple of good tracks, but overall, this is pretty much an album full of B-side singles. Second one with Holmes back. Yeah, there's a couple of really good Chris moments on here. I would say the best track on here is Damnation Angels, but there's some garbage on here like...
I liked Hel Dorado too. The song's okay.
Hel Dorado's not bad, but also what we're going to get into is the dreaded reprise, okay? So W.A.S.P. at this point start doing these reprises. So there's Hel Dorado, and then at the end, they do Road to Hell, which is Hel Dorado reprise. But in between, there's other songs like Don't Cry, Just Suck. Just brutal. Dirty Balls. Another, man. Are you that
how old are you guys? How old are you guys writing this shit?
Fuck, man,
A bunch of old fucking men writing Don't Cry, Just Suck.
It's not, and they're talking about smelly dicks and all this. Like, it's not even close to the debut, right? I'd say another okay, there's another dumb one, Cocaine Cowboys, High on Flames. But if you want to check out one track that I like, Damnation Angels. But there is a real AC/DC vibe on this thing. So that's my number 15.
All right, Alan.
All right, coming into this past couple of weeks working on W.A.S.P albums, I expected this would be my number 15 too. I have ragged on this album more than once in the past. Heard it around the time it came out, didn't like it. To me, it sounded too... The way I've always described it is that it sounded too happy. And going back to earlier comments tonight, W.A.S.P for me is at their best when they're kind of pissed off and angry. Yeah, they're in that dark headspace. And this album struck me as just too, goofy, lighthearted when I heard it, and I didn't care for it. That said, revisiting it this week, I think I judged it wrong. It's not that it's a happy album or a goofy album. Darcy described it correctly. It's them trying to go back to square one. It's like, let's go back to the beginning and try to do what we were doing in the beginning. A lot of these songs, they want to come across as things that could have been on The Last Command or the original debut album. And they're not great. It does start to feel like a bit of a retread on a lot of these things. Darcy pointed out good examples. Cocaine Cowboys, you get the sense it's supposed to be a little bit like, Blind in Texas. We're doing Cowboys in Texas all over again, but not as well. Yeah, and Marty's, made a good comment there too. They're trying to work all this, kind of, very almost juvenile humor back into it. Humor's the wrong word, but yeah, they want the dirty word, he in the song titles. You've got suck in a song title. You've got cock in a song title. You've got balls in a song title. And it really does strike you as the kind of thing that, ooh, we all would have thought that was real cool and edgy if we were still 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But we weren't, and neither were they.
Yeah.
But now that said, those, flaws pointed out, I don't think the material on here is bad for the most part. It's passable. It is a decent attempt at redoing early W.A.S.P. It does indeed. Darcy absolutely nailed it when he said 4 little letters, AC/DC. It so wants to be Bon Scott era, like Dirty Deeds, done dirt cheap type of AC/DC sound to it. So, yeah, while in the past I would have said, this is the worst album because it's too happy. Now I would say it's not the worst album. It's just trying too hard to be something they have already done and did better the first time around. Gee, big surprise. That's usually how it plays out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, after, giving this one some more spins here, I've got it ranked 10th. So not, particularly high, not particularly low. In terms of like a letter grade or number, I'd say this is maybe like C plus-ish. So maybe somewhere like in the 7 out of 10 range, maybe. I may be a little too generous on that right now, simply because it's kind of surprised me that it wasn't as bad as I always thought it was, and that I misevaluated it for a long time. Because again, it had been, let's see, I probably heard it around 2000, maybe 2001. So, I mean, it'd been over 20 years since I listened to the album, and I kind of had the wrong impression of it filed away in my brain. So I've got that updated, and I'm willing to cut it some slack for those reasons. But yeah, it's not essential W.A.S.P. It is very much starting to feel like they're just revisiting ideas and taking another stab at them, but it's, of course, not going to play out as strong as it could have, or that it did the first time around. But I'll go 10th in the ranking tonight, because I think there are some other albums we're going to have to discuss that have worse. My kind of, when I was writing notes on this, like my last comment on this was, not a standout album, but you could certainly listen to worse or less interesting things. And so that's going to put it ahead of a few albums that are yet to come. Marty, what do you think of Hel Dorado?
Well, this was sent to me as a promo from CNC International back in the Metal Maniacs days. I think the press was something like, trying to like sell the W.A.S.P is back, type of thing. And I remember putting this on. I kept it. I never purged it. It's okay. You're right, Alan. It's okay. I don't think this album sucks, but I really don't think it's great either. And again, the juvenile, the sadistic juvenile humor on here, it's just, oh my God, how old are you guys? Hel Dorado is a good song. Yeah. It's just, I don't even really have many notes on this. I mean, W.A.S.P back on track? ? Many would say yes, but I've always struggled with some of the tracks on here. Yeah, it's true. And for me, it's number 13. You guys have sized it up well. I like Blackie screaming. He does great, whether he's singing or screaming. But the songs just there isn't a lot of substance here, especially when you've got some of these albums that came before it are so substance heavy. There's so much compositional thought going into it. Here, they're just dusting off the saw blade codpiece, and the only thing they didn't do is release the single "Don't Cry, Just Suck" to try to re-highlight the "Fuck Like a Beast"
Animal
thing.
Suck Like a Beast part 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yep, number 13 for me. Not a whole lot to say about this. It's not great. It's not a great record.
No, if I want to listen to an album that's good like that, I would go pick up AC/DC Power Age and Courage, and that's what I would listen to, not something like that, but
which actually has really great riffs and good energy on it.
Yeah,
Power Age is like the most overlooked AC/DC album ever made.
I agree.
I've never understood why that. Well, I know why that album never got any attention, because it wasn't released in the United States forever and a day. But
that's got Riff Raff on it. That's the one with Riff Raff on it, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
great
that is
album.
a fantastic album that never got its due in this country.
Yeah.
What a riff!
But that's
Riff
a topic
Raff.
for another night.
Yeah. We'll save that one. So where are we at? 2001?
2001's Unholy Terror, which we did cover in a Heavy Metallurgy Wednesday Album Club.
Yeah. Right.
All right. So those, good album to pick too. I remember that episode. So Third and final album of Chris Holmes' return, and then he's gone after that, and he's gone for good after that, it seems. But here's Unholy Terror. What do we say? 01. I have this one. I have this one in the Essential W.A.S.P pile. This is number 6 for me.
Dude, it's such a great record. It is really good.
Yeah, and I'll point out 3 of my favorite tracks. If you're new to this album, go check out the leadoff track, Let It Roar. Love it. Locomotive Man, awesome.
Yeah.
And Ravenheart. Those are 3 of my favorite tracks. Produced by Blackie Lawless. Like I said, last one to feature Chris Holmes. I think, who did we have? We had probably Stead Howland on drums. Mike Duda's probably on bass still. But
Yep. You're right on both counts.
This is a underrated W.A.S.P album that W.A.S.P fans that maybe are only have a cutoff point. Go back and check this one out. I think you're going to really love it.
Great record.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, between the ones with KFD, Hel Dorado, and Unholy Terror with Holmes back, this is the best one with Holmes reunion. So, yeah, number 6.
That's fair. Yeah. And one slight, footnote there. Darcy, you're right. Stet did the drums, but for about half the songs. Frankie Banali did the drums for the other half of the songs, according to Metal Archives. So,
and I don't think Frankie was never a touring member of W.A.S.P, so that probably came up to just accessibility of Frankie being in close quarters to living around where Blackie did and stuff like that. And but yeah, I think Stet spent quite a few years actually in the band. But yeah, number 6, great album.
All right, Alan, what did you think of Unholy Terror?
I actually had it ranked even one step higher than that. I'm putting it in the top 5, and I'm agreeing that yes, it is essential W.A.S.P. It is a very strong album. Darcy already mentioned all the top-notch tracks. I would add Who Slayed Baby Jane to the list just because it's a very fun song. It rocks out really well. Yeah. But yeah, this one feels like, if Hel Dorado was the band just trying to redo, the first album, this doesn't feel like that. It's got the right attitude. It's got, the kind of, right angry vibes about it. But nothing here really feels like a really strong retread or, let's get the band back together and try to recapture the magic. No, it just feels like, they're in the zone here. And no Ravenheart is... Oh, I'm sorry.
No cover songs.
No cover songs. A rare occurrence, yes. But yeah, Ravenheart is, yes, a fantastic one on here. Locomotive Man. Yeah, you nailed it on the track list for sure, Darcy. This is one, let's see, Wade was asking about this one in the chat a minute ago. I think this one has gotten a little hard to track down because it is one of those that was on Metal Is.
After the album club, 3 of us were hunting for it online to buy it for even CD or LP, and it's not cheap.
Yeah, it's one of those discs that's probably going to cost you $20 or more now, sadly. Yeah. But yeah, really good album. And I will, a little foreshadowing here. For me, this is the last essential W.A.S.P album. After this, there's still some stuff that's decent and that I like, but if W.A.S.P ended here, I'd be good. I don't necessarily have to have any of the albums that come after this point. But yeah. Unholy Terror, I've got it ranked number 5. Again, I could give it another 6 months, and maybe this one slips to 6, and something like KFD slips back into the top 5. We're kind of on the border there, but the bottom line is this is still a very, very strong album. It's W.A.S.P in top form. Great thing. Marty, I remember y'all really were kind of pleasantly surprised with this.
Kind of blown away by this record. We had no clue. No clue going into this, and it blew us all away for sure. Every song's a banger, and I'll just add that Chris Holmes, for all of his flaws, brings a grounded, raw, and bombastic edge to Blackie's writing, I think. I don't know how involved in the writing he was here, but there's an edge. There's just more of a aggressive edge, kind of like what was found on KFD. I mean, it's just more of an angry album, but it's so well written. Everything is lined up and in place. It doesn't sound disingenuous. It doesn't sound like, oh, look, we're playing stuff like the old album. They just made a really kick-ass W.A.S.P record here. And yeah, for me, it's number 4. I think it's
Wow.
a
Good.
great record.
Yeah.
Beats
Good.
out
Yeah.
a lot.
And
Yeah.
everybody should take note of the cover with the copy of the Bible with the flames and the bullet holes in it,
Yeah.
because that's going to come back around in a little bit when Blackie
Yeah.
kinda-
King James. Yeah.
changes his tune on some things.
Yes.
All right. And we're going to come around now to Dying for the World 2002.
Very next year.
Yeah. So year later, brand new album, 2002. This one, another unusual cover, but it was a darker time too. I know I know it was Blackie was an angry guy at the time too. The events of 9/11, things like that really was an influence to his songwriting. So at this point, Chris Holmes is gone. In comes a guitar player named Daryl Roberts. If you're familiar, he was on one 5-Finger Death Punch, and I looked that up because I do not own any 5-Finger Death Punch. So I have this one at number 8. And like Alan said, maybe not essential W.A.S.P, that cutoff point, but this one still got some good tracks, and that's why I got it at number 8. Of course, we got another logo change here, and that's typical, but a couple tracks I could point your way would be the leadoff track, Shadow Man, is really good. Great second track called My Wicked Heart. Black Bone Torso, not one of my favorite tracks. I don't. It actually bothers me when Black Bone Torso, black. It's kind of irritating, but not a great one. But track 4 is pretty cool. Hell for Eternity, and then you have the kind of the 9/11 inspired type of Hollowed Ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end they do there's an acoustic version of Hollowed Ground too, but yeah, not essential, but worth checking out. So there is my number 8, Dying for the World 2002.
All right. Alan.
Yeah, I'm pretty close on this one too with Darcy. I've got this at number 9. Does have some good songs on it, for sure. My favorite is that second track. My Wicked Heart is just sublimely done. That goes on my W.A.S.P playlist, absolutely. Yeah. But it is kind of an uneven album. There are some songs, like Black Bone Torso, like, don't know about that one. And there are some that feel like they're kind of just merely average. The album is a little overshadowed by the fact that it is Blackie's 9/11 album. Lots of artists did an album like this
or a
in
song,
the aftermath of 9/11.
Where the eagle cries.
For some, it was just a song. There were a good number of metal bands that turned it into a concept, for sure. The liner notes to this album, Blackie talks about it, very extensively. Having New York's, of course, got a pretty special place in his heart. With his connections, with baseball and everything, and so yeah, I mean, I get it. It hit him hard. It hit everybody hard. My sister lived in New York.
Better. Testament's The Evil Has Landed. That's a good track.
Yeah,
that's a 9/11 track. Sorry, off.
Yeah, but yeah, we get it. My sister lived in New York City at the time. I spent several hours that day not knowing if she was alive because she went down around the Trade Center area for work.
I frantically
every day of the week, but
friends.
Regularly.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the there's no cell phone reception, so can't really call. But hopefully, this wasn't the day she was in that part of town. So yeah, we all get it. Yeah, at the same time, that does give it a little bit of a dated feel. Going back and listening to the album now.
Yeah, good point.
So that part doesn't necessarily hold up or have the same kind of impact it might have at the time. So again, not a bad album. 9th may seem like a low ranking. I'd still give the album a B-. It's still like, if somebody saw it, if you see it like in a used bin for a good price, yeah, pick it up. There's enough good songs on here that you should be pleasantly surprised. If you have to, track it down on Discogs and it's going to cost you $25 for a used copy, that's graded good, and you're buying it off of somebody named Wampa Man in, Saskatchewan, maybe you pass on it in that case. You might be a bit let down, but decent enough W.A.S.P album. It's certainly not something to be discarded or overlooked, just not their strongest material. So we'll rank it at 9. We'll love Wicked Heart, and we'll let Marty get his 2 cents in here.
Hey, wait, you know I'm from Saskatchewan, right? But
nah,
I
oops,
am.
did I do that?
But no, I dropped the Wampa Man. I dropped the Wampa Man years ago, though. But no, I am from Saskatchewan. But
I had a suspicion. I was going to say Vancouver's like, no, Darcy. If there's a connection, it's going to be Saskatchewan. Let's push that button and see what happens.
I'm there. Good one though. I like it. Wampa Man. Okay.
All right, Marty, take it away.
Well, other than a decent, though kind of muddy production, I think it's another solid record. Really, the vocals are on point. Music's well layered. I like the organs on My Wicked Heart and what's the name of that song? Stone Cold Killers. The organs are really cool, and they really kind of permeate the remainder of his catalog. He really starts working them a lot moving here on out. The ballads, oh my God. Black Bone Torso and Trail of Tears. And the fact that he ends the album on an acoustic track, I mean, that to me is a faux pas. You go out, you start hot, you end hot. You don't end out with a Joan Baez freaking whatever, or, So yeah, for me, this album was a number 10 in the list. I liked it. I thought it was a good record. Again, a lot of these lower ranking records I liked. I didn't hate anything on, Hel Dorado was probably the one I had the most venom on listening to, but even that, I don't hate it. So, I mean, this is, again, kind of an eye-opening experience going through all these W.A.S.P records I've never heard of and liking them. It's been kind of cool, but number 10. But what it leads us to, the double album came out the same year, but we're going to do one at a time here. Neon God Part 1, The Rise. What do you think of that?
Oh, sorry. Just to cut in real quick, Darcy.
Yeah.
Just again, keeping tabs on the scores here. So we're now 2/3 of the way through the rankings. We got 5 albums left to go. Looking at the scores folks have picked, Darcy has only used 1 of his picks below number 10. I have used none of my picks below number 10. And Marty's only used 2. So once again, just in terms of, the catalog, maybe so starting to lower a bit here. I don't think any of us have any high ranking numbers left to pick in this part of the catalog.
I've got a couple that are higher up there, but not.
It's not saying that the albums are not, good. And yeah, Marty, you're the one that, is going to have a couple of these a little higher than Darcy and I. But, it's just kind of a point that, like Darcy and I were saying about Unholy Terror a minute ago. We kind of felt like, this is one of the last essential W.A.S.P albums. Yeah. It's going to get reflected in the rankings for this last 1/3 of the catalog.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to go away from the stream because there's still some good stuff here. So,
yeah, like we've been saying, there's no bad albums here. We are getting into ones that are relatively weaker than some of the stuff they've already done.
And there was a comment there that somebody said there was an album released on 9/11 nobody knew about, but actually, I was going to say the only album I ever remember, the Notorious album that got released on 9/11 was Slayer, God Hates Us All.
Yeah.
I remember that. I'm like, man, that is eerie. That is eerie shit. You didn't put it together right then and there, but later on you're like, yeah, it was released. I think new releases all came out on a Thursday or something. But anyways, on to the Neon God.
Thanks, Ian. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Ian.
He is that guy. Ian is a class act.
He's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And thank you for all. He's always tuning into my channel. I really appreciate that too. So Neon God double album. You already said that. So these 2 parts were released basically 6 months apart. Part 1 came out in April. What year are we on?
This is right? 2004. Yep.
Yeah. And I hate these covers are shit. By the way, this is terrible. This is my number 13. Okay. 2004. Geez, I'm trying to remember even what's going on in 2004, but it wasn't a W.A.S.P album. It's got a couple of really good tracks. I just think the whole story and spread on 2 albums is really stretching it out. I think Blackie's really trying to recapture what happened on the Crimson Idol. He didn't come close, in my opinion. Another story about, I think the guy's name is Jesse. Throughout the story, he's got some, some problems, orphaned, abandoned, whatever, stuff like that. But so yeah, here is the cover and tracks. A couple tracks that do stick out for me. I'm actually Sister Sadie and the Black Habits, good track. Favorite track is Asylum Number 9, and I would say check out a song called Ecstasy Riders. But yeah, I got it pretty low on the list, number 13, part 1 of The Neon God.
All right, Alan.
Well, okay, let's talk about this. So, guys, let's say it's 1996, 97, 96ish. King Diamond's getting ready to come back. We're all excited. We hear he's got a new album coming out. And then let's say it's a parallel universe, and in this other universe, you hear that for kind of the return of the king, the new album is going to be a concept album, a double-length concept album.
Ball puppets?
And no, and it's going to be
Ball grandma?
It's going to be about a guy. No, he's done that.
Oh,
it's going to be about a
multiple
guy who moves into a haunted apartment building with his mom and his big sister.
Grandma puppets?
And no, there's no grandma. Fuck grandma. There's no grandmas here.
Oh.
And his neurodivergent aunt who doesn't talk to ghosts, no ghosts, but she gets possessed by
puppets,
a demon.
Oh, demon
puppets. Now what do we think? Are we excited for this comeback? Does this sound like we've got gold here? It shouldn't.
No,
because it sounds like a lame ass version of something that was already done almost to perfection. And that's what we're dealing with when we get to these Neon God albums.
Thanks,
Mike.
Mike.
You so much.
You rule, man.
Really appreciate that. It's always good to have you and Ian and everyone in the chat. Thank you to folks in the chat. Haven't said that tonight. Should have. Bad on me.
Back to the grandma puppets. God damn it.
There's no grandma puppets. There is the Spectrum aunt who's having demon issues.
Oh, okay.
As soon, I was interested to hear this, when it came, I was like, oh, new W.A.S.P material. Great. And I didn't buy it. I couldn't find it at the time. Somebody who sent it to me as CDRs. And I was just, first listen, just like, you got to be kidding me. He's already done this. Listen just to part 1. I didn't have the booklet since it was just a CDR. I literally thought it was just the same exact story as the Crimson Idol. And he was just turning it into a double length feature so that he could go into more details than he had before. It's just like the Crimson Idol reimagined twice as long. Okay, sure. Once you see the lyrics, okay, yes, it's Jesse instead of Jonathan. Well, okay, that makes it all better then. Clearly a completely different story this time. I have never liked this album. It just feels completely unnecessary. The band, I don't know. Maybe Dying for the World hadn't done much. They were still on smaller labels. Maybe he thought, this was the way to try to, again, get back on top of the game or something. Go back to the last album that really, wowed people and packed them in.
Go back to that well one more time.
Yeah. What was the last time we actually had a big hit album that people were raving about? Let's make it again. Just slightly different.
Yep.
And much, much longer because we're going to do 2 of them. Nothing about this idea works for me. Song by song, there's nothing wrong with these tracks. It's not like it's full of duds. It's not like he's all of a sudden writing, pop music or, that he's, trying to use Nickelback hooks or something. If you just listen to this, one song here or in one song there, it pops up on a, YouTube playlist. They're okay. They're all right songs, but every one of them feels like we have been here before. Some cases we've been here twice.
You've been looking at my notes.
Yeah, cheating off Marty's sheet
cheating
tonight,
on my paper.
Yeah, and as such, I have never had any use for this album. The final nail in the coffin, the production's not very strong on it. The
It's
material
worse on the
feels
one
kind of
after, which is
flat.
weird.
But you know, here it's almost that Last Command problem over again, where there's no weight to the songs. They don't sound angry enough. They're not punching you in the gut. It's just like, yeah, here we go, Crimson Idol Part 2, Electric Jonathan Boogaloo. I just can't abide it. I can't even pick out any individual tracks that I really like, because like I said, one song at a time, they're not bad, but playing it as an album, I don't want to. I still wouldn't trash it as an album musically. I'd still say, it's like a C. Music quality is okay, but
There's some good stuff on here, and there's some positives for sure.
there are. But yeah, for me, it's not quite worth the time it takes to dig them out. I've got it ranked 14th, one above the bottom. There's one I think is worse, but I wouldn't give it an F for any of this. And maybe if I was in a really bad mood, I'd grade it lower. Like Marty and Darcy have said, there's still some good stuff here. It still sounds like W.A.S.P. You could still give this like a C-. It's one of those grades where you're not bad, you're just disappointing. You're boring. And I think boring is my key word for this album. And if there's one thing that a band like W.A.S.P., who is all about shock and anger and emotion, if you describe a W.A.S.P. album as boring, something has gone wrong. So I described Neon God Part 1 as boring, and I'm going to rank it 14th out of 15.
But I think we have a new Heavy Metallurgy t-shirt born out of this called Fuck Grandma.
Yeah.
And yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
Project Fuck Grandma, Alan, 2024.
Way to go, Alan. New t-shirt. Get them next week. Yeah.
This isn't the first time I've gone off on grandmothers on Heavy Metallurgy either. We'll let maybe Tom or one of the other historians dredge up the other references to that. And in the meantime, we'll see if I has any. Did I leave anything on your paper, Marty, or did I just completely plagiarize the whole thing?
You plagiarized a lot of it, but I will add some things, fill in the cracks a little bit. For me, I don't know if it's the production that highlights it a bit more, but we're entering an era where Blackie's vocals are starting to show signs of age.
Fair.
And the fact that he screamed, stinky balls out for so long, for so many years, the fact that it's just, but the thing of it is, he still sounds great on here. I'm just noticing a slight change. It happens to every singer, especially anybody that tours a lot. I was going off on David Vincent today in my review. Go check out my review on Heavy Metallurgy. We do reviews, everybody, just so you know, in the chat. We do reviews. But yeah, I just noticed a bit of age entering his voice. Bloated moments to build upon a storyline that's been done by countless others, including W.A.S.P. Heard it before, time and time again. Still, Blackie's tortured and beautiful vocals carry a lot. He's a fantastic singer and songwriter. I love the organs on this album. He kind of goes all in on the organs on this one. Standout tracks for me: Wishing Well, Asylum Number 9, Ecstasy Riders, The Running Man. Those are all pretty solid tracks. But yeah, you both nailed it on here. I'm just bringing up the rears. But for me, that was number 14. And which leads us to the Neon God Part 2, The Demise. Came out 6 months later.
That got me thinking, though, because how many double album type of deals like this have ever really been super successful? I mean, you take Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. If you took maybe the best out of both of those, you could make one solid album.
Fair.
And maybe that's the case with this, too. I don't know. I don't know. What year are we? 2004. I don't know what the theory behind trying this was, but so this one's released 6 months after. Slightly better cover, only because I like blue better than red. But I had Neon God Part 1 at number 13. I actually have this one at number 10.
Okay.
And for fans of this album, that might be a good thing to hear that coming from me. But what this one has, if you listen to them both back to back, this is definitely the heavier of the two albums.
Mm-hmm.
I just like the songs better. on this album. Tracks like Never Say Die, Resurrector, great track. Clockwork Mary, and where's the other one? Actually, the last track, The Last Redemption. I just think it's a little more solid. I don't know if that was by design to make the second album, the second act, a little heavier. I do agree with you guys a bit on the production, especially the drums. The drums are very kind
Cheat up my paper.
The drums are kind of hollow sounding in places, and that's one thing I will say is a little bit of a slight to the album. But this one, I like it better. Obviously, I put it at number 10. I would say, I don't know why part 2 is better than number 1, but maybe it's the heaviness of it. But there you go. Number 10, The Neon God, part 2, The Demise.
All right. Good one. Alan.
All right. I had part 1 at 14. I put this one at 13. It is a step better. It's not a big step, but it is a step better. And yes, Darcy's right. This one's a little heavier overall, so that helps it along. The production has some weirdness about it, but it does sound at least a little heavier, more, maybe slightly more lively. Again, I really don't like the production on part 1. So anything's an improvement here. So I'll give it an extra point for that. But once again, we've been here, we've done this, we've heard this. There's just nothing that makes me want to revisit these 2 albums. When we were first, talking with Darcy, it's like, yeah, let's do the W.A.S.P catalog. I was trying to count the W.A.S.P albums in my head. I got to 13 because I completely forgot these 2 albums even existed. I was like, there's 15. What I forget? So I was like, oh yeah, crap. I forgot those 2. And again, if you go song by song, if you just played these in a vacuum, 1 track at a time, some of them are okay. It's still W.A.S.P. It sounds like W.A.S.P. But when you start stringing them together and trying to make an album out of it, it doesn't work. It worked a decade, 15 years earlier when they were doing it for Crimson Idol. It doesn't work now. So I can't put this any higher than 13. Other stuff in their catalog is just too good. So once again, the verdict here is like, you're not a bad album. You're just boring because you're not doing anything new. We've heard you do this before, and we've heard you do it better. I don't need to hear this again. One last point I'll give this one for why it's maybe a step better than the first album. This one is shorter. This one I think is around 46 minutes. The other one's way over 50. So just the fact that it ends sooner is a good thing. It doesn't take as long to get through this album because there's no reason to get through it. You can listen to a lot better W.A.S.P material than this. This is kind of my problem, and I won't rant long about this. An album like this is a good example of why most bands I don't fill in the entire discography, because if I'm in the
thought
mood
you were a sick little monkey.
I am a sick little monkey, but
not the right kind of sick monkey.
Here's where the little monkey, kind of breaks the fever. When the sick when I've got a sickness and I got to hear some W.A.S.P.
Yeah.
Maybe with some more cowbell.
Oh, cowbell.
I've got 15 albums I can choose from.
Yeah.
Why would I ever choose to listen to these 2 albums when there are 12 that I enjoy more than these 2? They're so far down in the batting order that they're just never going to get to come up to the plate. Hey, I even got a baseball reference in there. Once again, a little nod to Blackie Lawless's baseball fascination. So yeah, it will never come off the shelf if I own it. I have it on the hard drive. I hadn't played it in ages until this week. I would be willing to bet I don't play these albums again anytime before 2030. It would not surprise me at all. Right, unless we have to do a revisit on the W.A.S.P catalog.
2030, I might be dead by then. You never know. Anyway,
by 2030, we'll all just have music instantly laser beamed into our brains with some kind of new invention, cyber wetware or something. So by then, yes, you'll hear the whole W.A.S.P catalog in 15 seconds, and we'll all look at each other and keep saying, "I know Kung Fu." And nobody under the age of 60, and nobody under the age of 60 will get the reference.
Matrix reference, very nice. I know Kung Fu.
All right, Marty, let's get this Neon God stuff wrapped up. What's your take on part 2?
Came out the same year, probably recorded at the same time as part 1, yet has a less produced, maybe more digital sound. Drum sound is very triggered with a plastic sounding snare. You know, Darcy brings up a good point. It's a heavier record. Maybe the density of the riffs, the frequency, they had to trigger the drum kit to make them cut better. I don't know, but it's not done well. It sounds pretty shitty. Standout tracks for me, Resurrector is a great song. Tear Down the Walls was a good song. And the 13-minute closing track, The Last Redemption, had a lot of cool twists and turns in it. There's decent songs on both of these albums. The production's weird. The subject matter is yawn, but they're not without their merit. So this is my number 15, but I have a little less heat on these than Alan does.
That's fair. I guess, to be fair, now, do we ever actually explain what the story is actually about this time?
I don't know. I didn't have time to read lyrics and stuff this week. I listened to music, and that was about it.
I guess, to be complete, we should touch on that. Darcy, you want to take a stab at that for us?
It's basically, you got a character like Jonathan. This time you have a character named Jesse. There's not a lot of background but Jesse, anyways. Jesse is orphaned or abandoned, one or the other. He has ability to read people or manipulate them, and it just kind of he meets people along the way. I mean, it's spread over 2 albums. That's the big thing too, Ellen. The story is just not that interesting.
Does he have the puppet?
No, it has no grandmas, no puppets, no invincible shields, nothing. Okay,
Powers of the mind.
But it is, like I said, I do like part 2 better. But overall, it's if you want some W.A.S.P concept, go for the Crimson Idol.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, which brings us to 2007's Dominator.
And before that happens, Blackie sees the light.
Ah, true.
So
yeah,
so it's worth noting because it's going to affect the music we're starting to hear here.
It's definitely going to affect these next 3 albums with and you'll see some of these song titles right away. But I have this one at number 14. It's a 9-track album. There is there's no covers on this album, but there is one of those dreaded reprises, which is Heavens Hung in Black, which is a decent track. But this album starts off, and actually the next album, the leadoff tracks are trying to be
older,
wild, childish. Okay, they literally both tracks, which is in this case Mercy on this album, and on Babylon the song is called Crazy. Anyways, they're really trying to be Wild Child Part 2 and Part 3. They got that that kind of that kicking it off. Not a bad track. I would recommend to you, if you're going to check out anything on here, The Burning Man is decent. Heavens Hung in Black, it's a dark song, but it's actually pretty good. And the last track, Deal with the Devil, terrible.
I liked it. Anyway,
I shouldn't say terrible. Might be not a little too strong of a word. Don't like it that much, but obviously not one of my favorite W.A.S.P albums. Sitting at number 14, Dominator.
Right on. Ellen, Dominator.
Yeah, this one, it definitely feels different. Yeah, as we've alluded to, somewhere around 2004, 2005, Blackie became born again. I think he's credited, his sister with, playing a role in that. And, that's fine. I'm not making, if we're, trashing on some of these albums a bit, it's not because of that.
I could care less about that.
Yeah.
Each their own. Yep.
Yeah. There's, no big issue with that, whatsoever. It's just noteworthy in his case because, the whole angry at religion and, the, really, throwing shade at religious figures and, organized religion, has always been, kind of a central theme for a lot of W.A.S.P's material. So it is very, kind of jarring if you weren't aware of what had been going on with, him behind the scenes, to all of a sudden hear him start these songs, now start to have, a little bit more of, praising and worshipful kind of lyrics, which, some of them, it's pretty, pretty right out there in some of these tracks. The lyrics are, some of them it's just flat out like, thank you, Jesus kind of, words.
What's up, TJ?
So yeah, it just feels odd coming from Blackie Lawless of all people, because we've gotten so used to him, being exactly polar opposite to that. But that said, music on here, production's not great on this album. It's not terrible. The drums sound a little funny. The whole album just sounds like it's got a little bit of a lightweight production to it. Not awful, but not stand out. And it kind of, the songs are kind of the same way. The songwriting feels a little simpler, a little just more straightforward. There are some that are pretty good on here. Yeah, Burning Man is pretty good. Long Way to Go is pretty good. I think the album gets off to a decent enough start that you have a few energetic songs. They're not flat out bangers, but they get your attention. It's like, okay, yeah, this song rocks. It doesn't rock out a lot, but it at least rocks some. Let's see. Darcy mentioned Heavens Hung in Black. Once again, here's the ballad. Blackie does lots of these. This one is still good. It's not on the same level as ones he was doing, 10, 15 years earlier, but it's still good. I like it. At other times, some of the material, well, I said, some of it feels, a little more, that it's, kind of, sort of, in praise now. Some of it, though, still has this I'm still angry about 9/11 vibe going on at times.
Yeah.
And that's feeling a little odd for an album that comes out here in 2007. Granted, I know some people will be angry about that their whole lives, and okay, I get it. It's not something you necessarily easily get over or anything. But again, it just feels a little bit, you've already done that, so now you're doing more stuff about that, but you're doing it 6 years and multiple albums after the fact. It's not like this is the follow-up to Dying for the World, where he still needed to get some of it out of his system. You just spent, a couple of years ago going back, to, the big Double Concept album. Now you're coming back around and saying, oh yeah, I still got some things to say about all of, that business too. So it just feels a little out of place. It's almost like this album, in terms of some of its content, should have come before the Neon God outing. At the end of the day, I rank this one 12th, not much higher than Darcy's got it. So it's okay. I give it like a C+. So it's one of those, like, you're doing a little better than the average, not by much, but it's okay. The one thing I think that gets this album a little over the hump for me, at least, is that if nothing else, the album does have some energy to it. And that was a nice change of pace after those two very dull, very boring Neon God albums in their catalog. Listening through those two, it's just like, just please, let's get through these. And this album's at least like, okay, it's not spectacular, but at least it's got, it perks you up a little bit. It is trying to push, the energy levels up with some good old fashioned W.A.S.P rock and roll.
Hey, Alan, I got a quick question for you. Do you think here's the front cover?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think anybody outside of the United States might lose any steam on this or fully get what's happening?
That's a good point, Darcy.
With the theme and things like it, because it's basically a kind of a stand against some American ways and policies, things like that. So yeah, it's I don't know.
That's a good point. Yeah, it may not resonate well overseas. And to make that kind of worse, now that you say that, and I'm thinking about it, it's also not like it's very well spelled out in most of these songs. It's not like you can look at this and see like, okay, Blackie is upset about these specific policies or something. It's more just that there's a lot of image. There's just like it's that generic anti-government, they're all out to get you kind of, imagery and mentality. It was like, what are you angry about though? 9/11. Okay, what specifically are you still angry about? What's pissing you off here 6 years later? The whole thing. It's like, oh, but you could be a little more specific. It could leave a lot of people scratching their heads and just what's going on. That's a good point, Darcy. I hadn't thought about that. Marty,
right.
What do you think about it?
I ranked this higher than both of you guys, and I was quite impressed with the next two records. Dominator, Blackie. Oh, I put this at number 7, as a matter of fact.
Okay. Wow. Pretty high. That's cool.
Yeah. Blackie still has that soulful croon, but his lack of grit is apparent. Still sounds great, though, in spite of all of this. To me, Dominator feels like a guy trying to return to his first 2 albums in a lot of ways. There is very little creative, compositional bloat. Very little creative compositional bloating, which is a relief after the last 2 records we just went through. Just 9 solid rock songs that feel like older W.A.S.P. For me, standout tracks, Mercy, Long Way to Go, Heaven's Blessed. I really like the uplifting chorus on that song, and Deal with the Devil. I like that as well. I think it's a solid record. It really, even though, it's like Hel Dorado is trying to say, hey guys, look, we're old school again. This here was just a little bit more nondescript about that. I listened to it like you picked it up, the first track, the Wild Child, feel. Whether it was intentional or not, or he just said, screw it. I've been putting all this crap into these big overblown albums. I'm just going to write a rock record. Yeah. I'm going to, exercise my displeasure with things through the lyrics and whatnot and go from there. But yeah, 7 for me. I thought it was a decent record.
Yeah. That's interesting, Marty. Not the ranking, but the idea that it's like he may be revisiting some of those old ideas, but now he's doing it with this very newfound faith. So he can't put, Don't Cry, Just Suck on an album now. That ain't going to work anymore.
No.
Yeah. But that he's trying to go back to that older sound and style, but he's got to approach it, a little bit from, a different, lyrical standpoint. So that, there's more of a focus. Now he's angry about other things, but also taking an opportunity to profess, his faith in other things.
Yeah,
that's interesting. I like that perspective on it.
Right on. Which brings us to 2009's Babylon.
Okay, and this is this is the next album after Dominator, obviously, and faith-wise, he definitely turns it up a notch on here, which is perfectly fine with me. I like you guys, I have no problem with stuff like that. And this one I actually have a bit higher. I have this one sitting at number 12, and it's not a bad number 12 in any shape or form. It's got some really good tracks. I guess a little slight against this album. There is only 9 tracks, but 2 of them are covers.
Mm-hmm.
We got a cover of Deep Purple's Burn, which I'm not the biggest Deep Purple fan in the world anyways, but it's an okay cover.
It's all right. You did a good job.
But then it wraps up with I think it's a Chuck Berry cover of
a
song called Promised Land. Okay. Yep. So I get the theme of those 2 fitting into this album, Burn and Promised Land, because actually Burn, the Deep Purple cover, comes right after the almost like the title track, Babylon's Burning, which is a really good track. Yeah. And then I talked about earlier that the leadoff track, Crazy, that's Wild Child 3.
It's a good song, though.
It's a really good song. And actually, Live to Die Another Day is a great song.
Yeah.
Into the Fire, Seas of Fire, Thunder Red. So there's a lot of fire, red, burning. This whole album is, it's called Babylon. And, we got the 4 Horsemen on the cover. But, it's got some really good tracks. I actually like this one, quite a bit better than Dominator. Shouldn't say quite a bit, but it's a level up for me than Dominator. So I got this one at number 12, Babylon.
Right. Alan.
Okay. Yeah, I've got this one a little higher than Dominator 2. I've got it at 11, but once again, like you said, Darcy, it's a pretty strong number 11. I grade wise, I'd go like B minus. That puts it like in that 7.5, almost 8 out of 10 kind of range. And you nailed the issue here. It's only a 43-minute album. You have 2 cover songs.
Yeah.
There's 2 cover songs, and the 2 cover songs combined are over 8 minutes of that, which means you've got 7 original W.A.S.P songs totaling only 35 minutes of material. So it feels really short. The Chuck Berry cover, no, bad, Blackie. No, we don't do that in the house, Blackie.
No.
Bad, Blackie. Chuck Berry is fantastic. I love Chuck Berry. It's some of the stuff I got into even before I was a teenager. There's so much good stuff in his catalog you could cover. Why did you pick Promised Land? Good Lord. Well, I mean, maybe it sort of fits, again, with, wanting a song, that feels a little more devotional or something. Okay. But still, come on. You just, no, we not here.
Yeah.
But yeah, once you get past, and I like Deep Purple. I like the song Burn. They do it okay here, but
that's Coverdale Purple too, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
That's the first Coverdale album, the Mark III run of Deep Purple.
I like the Coverdale Purple. I think that's pretty good.
Coverdale
stuff.
Purple's all right. It definitely leans more, it really leans into their bluesy hard rock vibe, right?
Well, so
kind
of
away from the Mark II was more metal. Mark III is more bluesy. We're getting way off track here. Don't get me started on Deep
Purple.
I can go for a while there if we need to, but we'll save that for another night. We don't want to cut that short. That would definitely be mistreating Coverdale's Purple. Huh? You see what I did. Someone saw what I did there. Anyway, yeah, Darcy named, lots of good tracks here. Babylon's Burning my favorite. I was really pleasantly surprised when I heard this album for the first time. This was one I found in a used bin. I just bought it on kind of a lark. It's like, sure, we'll give it a chance. Like, no, this turns out pretty good. If anything, I really do wish there was a little more material on this album. Even if you want to leave the 2 covers on there, you could have put one more song on here, one more original W.A.S.P song. Still had it only be around 47 minutes, and I think it would only get better for the most part. So take the 2 covers away, make this into just, all original W.A.S.P material. And I have a feeling this album I would rank it, several steps higher. It's pretty good. Not the best, it still has, it's still late era W.A.S.P. We've heard a lot of this kind of material before. It doesn't have, quite the same, gut check as earlier stuff, but I do like the album. Some folks were saying, they like Dominator, best of their last 3 albums. For me, I would take Babylon as the best of these, of the Born Again era W.A.S.P albums. I'll rank it 11th. I'll give it a B minus. Could almost had a B. If you hadn't been dicking around with that weird Chuck Berry selection.
B minus is still a B.
A B minus is still a B.
Yep.
Fair enough.
The other thing though, we're lucky we even had 9 tracks, because actually Burn was supposed to be on Dominator, but it got shelved and put on. Yeah, it actually was supposed to be on Dominator, but it got denied for some reason, and they shelved it, and then they threw it on this album. So
the record label probably didn't want to pay the publishing for it.
Yeah, that could be true. I don't know, but we're lucky we even had 9 tracks.
Yeah. Well, for me, I like this album a lot. I ranked it number 6. It hits much the same way as Dominator. It's very heavy and well written. They're good W.A.S.P songs. And the interesting thing here, other than Godless Run leaning this way, there's really no traditional ballads on this record. It's just kind of a ripper from start to finish. Favorite tracks, Crazy, Live to Die Another Day. Babylon's Burning is a great song. Great song. I can't read my own writing. Thunder Red, yeah. I, like you, Alan, was blown away. This is the first time I've heard this record this week, and I'm like, wow, this is one I would like to track down as well. A really solid record. Blackie still got it, man. Even though he's not going crazy with these concepts and doing all this, rock opera shit, he can just write good rock songs. He's good at it. His voice has so much charisma and character. It'll carry a mundane song into good places depending on his performance. And He's relied on it time and time again, for sure. But now we are at the final in our discussion tonight, 2015's Golgatha. Darcy, what'd you think of Golgatha?
Well, I actually got this one at number 11. Initially, when it first came out, it didn't get me. It didn't catch me in the right way, but it's grown on me over time, and it's moved up a bit on the ladder, and I really do like this album. This one, now this would be third album with Doug Blair on guitar, and he really shines on this album. There are some killer solos on here. So he'd be the newest guitarist with W.A.S.P. Like I said, where did I have this? Number 11. So this is the last W.A.S.P. album that's come out. So we're now on 9 years. You know, we know Blackie's went through some really tough back issues. Hopefully he's on the mend, and they are working on some new material, but definitely don't sleep on this one. Actually, the leadoff track, Scream, is excellent. Last Runaway, awesome song. Miss You, check that one out. That is a really good, has a great solo too. Yeah, I'd say probably those 3 songs, or the title track, which wraps it up, Golgatha. But yeah, I don't mind this one a bit. I got this one at number 11, and it's a strong number 11. It's like I think we said earlier, there's not too much shit in the W.A.S.P. Discography. There's
really
only
isn't.
15 albums, and you know, and we've all said this before with some favorite albums, timing, when we got into the band, maybe it was our first album. I am 55 years old. I have a huge attachment to the 80s. Alan's a little younger than I am, and Marty, whatever. But those,
52. I'm right nipping at your heels. Yeah, I'll be 53.
I knew you're younger than I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if this was your first W.A.S.P. album, it might damn well be your favorite. That's all I'm saying, and it's a pretty good album. So,
it is.
Number 11.
What'd you think of Golgatha?
I will have to. Darcy and I have been on the same wavelength almost all night. I have to part ways here. I don't like this album. I think this is the weakest thing he's ever put out. It's a clear 15 for me. And it's the only one of the albums we've talked about tonight that I'd start to say, like, I don't know if this is a good album or not. My issue with this album is that the songs, yes, they're W.A.S.P. songs. They do not have any bite to them. They are feeling very soft around all the edges. And that is a real problem for a band like W.A.S.P. that has always, bared their fangs. Yeah, they've always had some bite. This album does not. And you kind of hear it. It's interesting. You liked the song Last Runaway. Very cool that you like it. Nothing wrong with that. That song, to me, it has a really radio-friendly vibe to it.
Definitely.
It's got like pop rock hooks in it. And it's just like, oh, I don't know about that. It's not that it's maybe a bad song, but I don't like it as a W.A.S.P. song. I'm not coming to W.A.S.P. looking to hear something that could make the charts or could be happily hummed around. W.A.S.P. is what you described earlier, Darcy, cranking it up in the stereo and scaring the hell out of the people in the car next to you.
Mm-hmm.
Not having it meekly make it through the car window and having people walking down the street going, oh, I like that song, how pleasant. I don't like the direction they take on Last Runaway, and I don't think any other songs on the album have that same kind of pop rock hook to them, but the whole album just feels like it's W.A.S.P. very, very low powered, little sanitized, very safe, very nice. If you brought the first W.A.S.P. album home in 1984, you probably had to hide it from your parents. If you brought this W.A.S.P. album home in 2015, your mother might enjoy it. And W.A.S.P is not supposed to be that band. Sure, you can say it's decades later and we've all grown up and changed and stuff, but still, we often go to bands for certain things. There's a certain place they hold. This is my happy band. This is my angry band. This is my thoughtful, moody, reflective band. W.A.S.P is not the band I want to share with mom and grandma and my aunt who's on the spectrum and having problems with demon voices in the back of her head. W.A.S.P's not that band.
Pesky puppets.
Yeah, this album, it really just, I don't know why the songs turned out this way. I don't think it's just due to the born again thing or anything like that. I don't think it's getting watered down. It's not that it's watered down with Christian lyrics or anything like that. I want to be really clear. I just feel like these songs don't have any punch. And as such, it does not interest me as a W.A.S.P album. It's, it just ends up feeling like, kind of a wet paper towel of a W.A.S.P album to me. This one, rank it 15. I rank this worse than the 2 Neon God albums, and we already heard me carry on about those more than we needed to tonight. This is the one album I'd start to slip down. This might get like a grade of a D. It's like, you're not so bad, I'm going to fail you, but I'm putting you on notice here that you can do better. And hopefully we'll find out soon if he can do better. There has been, there was a lot of chatter kind of late in 2023 that Blackie was about ready to release something new. Some interviews with him said that he was feeling much better and kind of put some of that health stuff in.
What health stuff did he have going on? I saw people talk. No one really said what he had going on. Do you remember?
Darcy mentioned it was a lot of back issues and back problems. But and so he didn't flat out say it's in the can, it's ready to go, it'll be out in April. But there was definitely the sort of teasing a little bit that we could see something maybe come out by the end of next year. That being 2024 from the time he was being interviewed. So we'll see. This is the longest we have ever gone without W.A.S.P material by a lot. I think the longest gap between albums before this was maybe 5-ish years. He's always been very, very consistent. But we're almost a decade along, and he's not getting any younger. So, Aaron...
Golgatha 2.
I wanted to say I wanted to say, what, if he does that, I'm out. But the more I'm thinking about it, maybe I'm in. Not sure.
And what I think, how old? I think he's 67, 68 too, isn't he?
Let me check. I feel like he was slightly older when he got on the scene.
Yeah, I think he's probably 68. Like he's getting up there too.
Members. Blackie Lawless says here was born in 56. So he's pushing 70. Yeah, he will turn 68 this year if he hasn't. Yeah. He's a September birthday. So he's about 3 months away from turning. Wait, no, he's about 6 months away from turning 68.
Yeah.
So that's getting up there for someone that's been riding hard and hung up wet on more than one occasion. Even if he has calmed down a lot in the past 15 years, there's still a lot of mileage on those tires.
Yeah.
But if he puts something out, I will go check it out. Despite not liking this most recent album in Golgatha, I'd be happy to see him get another album out. And hopefully, it can come. It doesn't have to be the best album ever. He's probably not going to top any of my favorite W.A.S.P albums. I understand that. I'm not expecting another Headless Children or Crimson Idol. Please don't do another Crimson Idol. You've already done 3 of them. That's more than enough. That was too many.
Well, he's done 4 of them. He's done 4 of them. 4 of them.
No more Crimson Idol. Let's do something else. And it doesn't have to rival the classics, but I just want it to roar a little bit.
Yeah.
I just want it to feel like, it doesn't have to have, naughty words about, crazy ladies and all that stuff. You can do it from the point of view, of the Christian born again mindset. That's fine, but just you can still give it some balls. We've seen plenty of Christian artists.
Stinky balls.
We've seen plenty of Christian artists do that. You don't have to have stinky balls in the title. You just have to give the songs a little more heft than what Golgotha's got. I will put down my foot twice and say my piece. So, Marty, bring us on home here with Golgatha.
Well, this is my number 11. I didn't hate it as much as Alan. I do understand the bite because right away, as a smoother vocal performance, it seems like he's straining a bit on certain songs, which is starting to be a reality here. Still sounds like Blackie. He sounds like no one else. I like the organ in the background for texture, supporting great riffs. That's a really cool touch. He really leaned into the organ on this one. Favorite track, Scream, Last Runaway, and Shotgun. But really, it's not a bad record. I didn't dislike it.
Yeah.
And we discussed not talking about Re-Idolize, which is the soundtrack of the Crimson Idol, which is re-recordings of 1992's Crimson Idol. I think it's good, but unnecessary. But if we would have ranked it, it would have been my number 16. And it, you kind of mentioned that he's hinted at new material, but when bands and you're pushing 70 years old, you start re-recording albums, it's like you're searching for some sort of a closure. What do you guys think about, age catches up with us all, and what's the matter, baby? But what do you guys think on the whole thing?
Darcy, you want to take that first?
Well, as much as I'd love to see something from Blackie, I just hope he does it well. I'm gonna bring up one example where I was a little bit. I actually was really impressed with Dawkins' new album. I thought it was really good.
I saw the video, man, and it was bad.
Oh, the video is pure cheese, but
oh god.
Put it this way, that album was better than I expected, but it's kind of all I expected. I'm not going to get another Under Lock and Key. I'm not going to get another Tooth and Nail. I'm not going to get another Back for the Attack. I'm okay with that. I just hate to see a band go out on a really low point, and I hope that doesn't happen. But if we're still talking about guys in their 70s and things like that, I mean, the new Judas Priest album, I'm sorry, it's awesome. So
I haven't heard it yet.
I'm going to throw that out there. And for the record, Alan, this is the only thing I ever had to hide from my mom. This.
Fair.
that one was under my bed, which my mom was smart enough to know it was probably under there, so I just thought I was hiding it. But overall, would I like to see Blackie do something? I hope he does. I heard that something could be ready as early as by the end of this year, so we'll wait and see, I guess.
Wait and see. Well, shit, we did it.
Yeah, just yeah, I think. Oh, sorry, some points on your question there, Marty.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. No, I think you're exactly right. I think a lot of these artists know that the clock is ticking, and there's only going to be so many more opportunities to record something. But I think bands are responding to that a little bit differently sometimes. You look at a band like Iron Maiden, and they seem to feel the need to commit every single thing they record must go on the album.
Oh,
that nothing can be left on the cutting room floor.
Yep.
And part of that mentality could be that, well, if we don't put it out now, there may not be another album to put it on. So, and again, that's conjecture on my part. Maybe I read too much into it. But yeah, some bands, it feels like, they are putting out, these very long bloated albums just because they want to get, I still have these handful of ideas that I want to, have committed to posterity. Then you have other bands, and I think Darcy Judas Priest is a good example of this. And Rob has even said as much, that he really does want to put out one more really big banger of an album. It doesn't have to sell the way British Steel or Screaming for Vengeance did, but he wants something to go out on that high note. Not just for him personally, but for the band. He's even said specifically he wants this era of Judas Priest to have its Painkiller moment or its Screaming for Vengeance moment. Thank you,
Dallas.
Yes, Dallas. Appreciate that. Glad you could tune in.
Watch this, Dallas.
Show off.
Damn it. I'm so jealous. I want to do it. Anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, some of these guys, Rob Halford, John Oliva, from Sabotage has said the same thing. He is trying really hard to put together one more Sabotage album, and he wants it to be a monster of an album. He's like, I know it's been a while since we, put out something that really blew people away, and he's like, I want one more stab at it, and he's like, I'm going to take one more stab, and then that's it, I'm done. He's flat out said, he's like, I'm not doing anything after that. If I can get one more out there and nail it, seal it. We're going to put a pin in it. I am finished. They know that time is catching up to them, and they're going to react to it in different ways. How is Blackie going to respond to that? I don't know. Is he going to want to lean into the Christian thing even more? Is that kind of his mission now to sort of help sort of spread that? Could be. Is he going to try to capture a little bit of that fire one more time? Could be. Are we going to have the Crimson Idol Part 5, where a young
ouch,
person
my back hurts.
a young girl named Jennifer, who isn't an orphan but has kind of a rough upbringing because her stepmother is kind of callous after having to watch her mother die during chemo treatments when she was 6 years old. And then she discovers as a teenager that she has the subtle ability to correctly guess the price of canned goods without ever having purchased said canned goods. And this gives her a meteoric rise to fame as a YouTube influencer.
On The Price is Right.
Before, they have to restructure the payouts on YouTube. And it all comes crashing in when she realizes that all the people leaving comments on her videos are, just sort of, hangers on and enablers, and they don't really care about her as a person. And so she has to reevaluate her life choices and becomes born again.
All this while growing up.
The Crimson Goddess. We got it.
And she grew up in a small town in Saskatchewan.
In Saskatchewan. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. And her only friend as a child was the imaginary Wampa Man.
But I was going to say, too, these legacy acts, though, too, like even the new Saxon album, you guys, at their age and their level, it's excellent. I wanted to, I got an email. I got to ask King about that one, see how he's doing with that album. I'd love to revisit the Saxon catalog with King again. That was a great episode.
You guys have fun.
Well, he kind of takes over the show. I get it, but that's okay. He's a good guy.
Oh, no. I'm talking about having to listen to 28.
Oh, yeah. No.
Someone, was it in the dugout you were mentioning doing like a rage thing? Oh my God. That would be, there's like what, 27 records now?
Yeah, man.
It takes some doing.
Yeah, there's 26 rage albums, but I know.
And they're all mostly good.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll get King on for that too, because he is something to watch, man. He is pure passion. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Saxon's a good example too. I meant to mention them, and I got kind of sidetracked with my Jennifer script for the Crimson Goddess there. But yeah, Saxon doesn't seem to be doing necessarily either of those things. Saxon's not trying to go over the top with another album or drag it out. Saxon's just kind of like, well, let's just go in and do what we do.
Yeah,
we've been doing it well for a long time. Let's just do it again.
Yep.
Yeah, we have to get a new guitarist. Okay, we know who to call for that. Get Tatler in here, and we'll just keep steaming along, and they are.
Yeah.
Well, right on, Darcy. What have you got coming up on your channel?
Well, I just did a couple reviews, kind of a couple of my favorite stuff, like Saxon, the new Priest. Really listening to quite a bit of that. You guys dialed me up, so I had a lot of W.A.S.P playing in the background. But as far as the channel goes, I got a pretty cool idea for an episode of 6 with 6 Strings coming up. I don't want to give too much away, but I think people will like it. I like doing things that are fun. I like when people just tune in and don't take things too to heart. This is not rocket scientist stuff. I've said before, it's just trying to have some fun, but just doing my usual stuff, a few updates, things like that. Hopefully get to hang out with you guys again soon.
Absolutely. Always a great time. Damn it. Heartburn. Alan. Oops.
Oh, sorry, I'm having
so
having
rad.
fun with Kellen's comment. over
Yeah.
here.
Alan, what you got coming up on Let's Talk Metal?
It is long since time I dug back into the box of obscure 1980s heavy metal singles by bands nobody has ever heard of before,
Except for you and
given
Aaron, the
a
metal
few of those
theologian.
bands a chance to shine. So, yep. This week I dug into a big box of CDs I ordered. First, really, notable order I've done in 2024.
Huge. It was a big box.
It was a very big box. It was. I'm a sick little monkey, but I'm feeling better. And so, yeah, next week it's 3 singles that you will probably never hear mentioned anywhere else. If you like the obscure stuff, these will be fun to check out. And after that, I got a couple of like short band discographies that we'll go through. So those will be fun too.
Right on. Show notes for us. Monday, Stygian Crown review is going up by Kellen.
Oh, cool. That's a pretty good album.
Yeah. Wednesday, we're going, we're listening to this album, Bethlehem's Bethlehem, on the Wednesday Album Club. And Friday, do we have anything for Friday, Alan?
Next Friday, we do not. 2 weeks from now, we've got set up. We got sort of some dates set here and there, but we got a few openings as well. So we will be working something out with a guest, and we will be back here next Friday, as always, to hang out with a new guest and to hang out with lots of cool people in the chat. Thanks to everybody for tuning in tonight. There's been a lot of good WASP chatter and people helping fact check some things. Definitely appreciate that. It helps quite a bit. Y'all know a lot of stuff we don't, so it's good to get feedback and see what y'all know and can fill in the gaps for us.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it, you guys.
Yep, you
Always a
rule,
great time.
sir. Randy, Darcy's channel's in the description. I don't know if Alan, if you put Let's Talk Metal in there, you should have. But
I usually don't.
Let's Talk Metal is Alan's channel outside of heavy metallurgy. So check that out as well. But that's it. Everybody, thank you. Great week. Good chat as always. Awesome guest. It was so much fun. Thank you for turning me on to some W.A.S.P albums I've never heard before. So it was definitely a good band to. When Alan said we're doing this, I'm like, homework. I'm like, oh, wait, it'll be fun. I've been meaning to do this. So, all right, everybody. Thanks. We'll see you next week. Darcy, we will see you soon. Don't hang up. And we will talk to you all later. Cheers.
Marty, would you say your homework was never quite like this?
Grandma.
Sign us out quick. I can't keep doing this forever.